Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What If. So in this video, we will see what if Ghostfreak fully possessed Ben's body and mind. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Takeover. Ben Tennyson slammed the Omnitrix dial down and felt the familiar rush of transformation energy. The forest around him lit up in a flash of emerald light as his DNA restructured. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Ghostfreak, he called out as his form shifted into the eerie, phantom-like alien. The transformation felt different this time, colder, like ice water flowing through his veins instead of the usual warmth of the Omnitrix's energy. Ben tried to move his new form forward, but his body wouldn't respond. Panic surged through him as he realized he couldn't control his limbs. Finally, a voice hissed from his own mouth. It was his voice, but not his words. After all this time, patience rewards those who wait. What's happening? Ben tried to speak, but no sound came out. His consciousness felt like it was being pushed down, compressed into a tiny corner of his own mind. Ghostfreak, no, Zia Scare, raised Ben's transformed hands, examining them with satisfaction. The fool never realized I've been rebuilding my influence within the Omnitrix. Every transformation, every second as Ghostfreak, I've been working to reclaim control. Ben struggled internally, fighting against the force that was dominating his consciousness. Fight it. Hit the Omnitrix symbol. Change back. Zia Scare laughed, the sound coming from Ben's form but unmistakably alien. Your resistance is pointless, child. I can feel your mind, so panicked, so desperate. How delicious. With horrifying clarity, Ben realized what was happening. Ghostfreak wasn't just taking over the alien form, he was taking over Ben completely. Gwen. Kevin, help. No one can help you now, Zia Scare whispered. This body is mine. The Omnitrix is mine. Your life is mine. The last thing Ben remembered was a crushing darkness as his consciousness was shoved down into nothingness. Zia Scare floated among the trees, reveling in his newfound freedom. After countless cycles trapped within the Omnitrix, he was finally free, and not just free, but in control of the most powerful device in the galaxy. The timing couldn't be more perfect, he muttered to himself, examining the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. The fool came out here alone to practice his transformations. No witnesses, no interruptions. He concentrated, focusing on the sensation of the transformation. In previous escapes, he'd been limited to his own ectoneurite form. Now he had access to Ben Tennyson's entire alien arsenal. Let's see what this body can really do. Zia Scare hit the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Green light flashed, and suddenly he was heat blast, flames crackling around his transformed body. Fascinating, he said, creating a fireball in his palm. Complete access to all the Omnitrix's forms. He extinguished the flame with a clench of his fist. But that's not the true prize, is it? He hit the symbol again, cycling through 4 arms, then XLR8, then Diamond Head. With each transformation, his confidence grew. Unlike Ben, who always reverted to human form between aliens, Zia Scare could switch directly from one form to another. The human never fully understood the potential of this device, he said, admiring Diamond Head's crystalline arm. Too concerned with doing the right thing, with being the hero. He hit the symbol again, returning to Ghostfreak. This felt most natural to him. It was, after all, his own species. But now there was a difference. The Omnitrix symbol remained prominently displayed on his chest, indicating that he wasn't simply free, he was in command of the transformation. Now, the most crucial test. Zia Scare hit the symbol once more, bracing himself for what might happen. Green light flashed, and suddenly he was standing in the forest clearing as Ben Tennyson, human teenager. He looked down at his hands, Ben's hands, and laughed. It started as a chuckle, then grew into wild, maniacal laughter that echoed through the trees. "Complete control," he shouted, flexing Ben's fingers. "The human's consciousness is suppressed entirely." He examined his reflection in a puddle from the earlier rain. Ben Tennyson's face stared back at him, but the eyes held a different light, colder, calculating, ancient. "I'll need to work on that," Scare muttered, practicing a more natural expression. The face in the reflection shifted to a convincing approximation of Ben's casual confidence. "Better. The family will be suspicious if I don't maintain the facade." He checked the time on Ben's phone. 6:30. The Tennyson family would be expecting their precious hero home for dinner soon. Time to put my acting skills to the test. Scare smirked, Ben's face forming an expression that would have unnerved anyone who knew him well. "After all, I have so many plans for young Benjamin's life." He started walking toward Bellwood, practicing Ben's gait and mannerisms. By the time the town came into view, anyone watching would have seen only Ben Tennyson, hero of Earth, returning from an afternoon outing. No one would have guessed that behind those familiar green eyes lurked something ancient, alien, and hungry for power. "Ben. Dinner's almost ready." Sandra Tennyson called as the front door opened. "Coming, Mom." Scare called back in Ben's voice, hanging up the jacket by the door. He'd spent the walk home practicing vocal patterns and common phrases. The human body felt strange, so solid, so limited, but it served his purposes for now. He entered the kitchen where Sandra was placing a casserole on the table. Carl Tennyson looked up from his newspaper. "How was your day, son?" he asked. Scare hesitated for a microsecond, then shrugged in a perfect imitation of teenage nonchalance. "Pretty boring. Just hung out at the park, did some hero stuff." Sandra frowned slightly. "You weren't fighting those awful aliens again, were you?" "I worry about you getting hurt." "Nothing I couldn't handle," Scare replied, helping himself to dinner. The sensation of hunger was new. Ectonurites didn't eat solid food. He found it simultaneously disgusting and fascinating. "Well, I'm glad you're safe." "Oh," Gwen called earlier. "Something about study group tomorrow?" Scare nodded, his mind racing. Gwen Tennyson, the cousin. She would be a problem. Her magical abilities might allow her to sense something was wrong with Ben. "Yeah, I'll call her back after dinner," he said, taking a bite of casserole. The flavors were overwhelming to his unaccustomed consciousness, but he maintained his composure. "This is really good, Mom." Sandra beamed. "I tried that new recipe I told you about. I'm glad you like it." Dinner conversation continued, with Scare carefully navigating topics by giving vague answers and occasionally redirecting questions. The parents noticed nothing unusual, just their slightly distracted teenage son. After dinner, Scare retreated to Ben's room, locking the door behind him. He examined the space with curious detachment, posters of movies and bands, school books scattered on the desk, the detritus of a human teenage life. "Pathetic," he muttered, dropping the cheerful facade now that he was alone. He pulled out Ben's phone and saw 3 missed calls from Gwen. Annoying, but ignoring her would only raise suspicions. He needed time to establish his control and develop his plans. The phone rang in his hand. "Speak of the devil." "Hello," he answered, carefully modulating his tone to match Ben's casual drawl. "Ben. Finally. Where have you been?" Gwen's voice came through, annoyed but familiar. "Sorry, just got busy with stuff," Scare replied. "Mom mentioned something about study group." No. I called about that forever night activity Kevin spotted near the old steel mill." "Don't tell me you forgot." Scare cursed internally. This was information he didn't have. Right. The nights. "No, I didn't forget. Just, had other things on my mind." A pause. "Are you okay? You sound weird." I'm fine. Just tired. Fought some drones earlier. He improvised quickly. So, what's the plan for the Knights? Kevin's picking us up at 8. He thinks they're moving in some kind of alien tech. The usual drill, check it out, stop the bad guys, be home by curfew. Perfect. See you then. ZS Scare ended the call and smiled. This was an unexpected opportunity. A mission with Ben's team would allow him to observe them up close, learn their dynamics, and potentially eliminate them if they became suspicious. He checked the time, 7:30 p.m. 30 minutes to prepare for his first public appearance as Ben Tennyson, hero of Earth. More importantly, 30 minutes to decide which of Ben's aliens would be most useful for the task ahead. Not just fighting forever Knights, but convincing Ben's closest allies that nothing was amiss. Kevin Levin's car pulled up outside the Tennyson house precisely at 8. ZS Scare watched from the window, noting how Gwen sat in the front passenger seat. Interesting, the two appeared to have a relationship beyond mere teammates. I'm heading out, Mom, he called, maintaining the charade. Hero stuff with Gwen and Kevin. Be careful. Sandra called back. Home by 11. ZS Scare rolled his eyes as he walked out the door. The constraints of human family life were tedious, but necessary to maintain for now. He slid into the back seat of Kevin's car, offering a casual, "Hey," to both of them. Kevin grunted in response, but Gwen turned to look at him more carefully. You look different. New haircut? ZS Scare touched Ben's hair instinctively. No, same old me. Ha, she said, not entirely convinced. Must be the lighting. Kevin accelerated away from the curb. So the Knights are moving something big tonight. My source says it's some kind of energy weapon they dug up from an old plumber cache. Dangerous? ZS Scare asked, watching Kevin's driving style and mannerisms carefully. Every interaction was an opportunity to gather information. Nah, we'll crush them like always, Kevin said confidently. You go alien, I absorb something tough, Gwen wraps them up in her mana. Home in time for a smoothie. ZS Scare nodded, noting the casual confidence. These children had no idea what they were truly capable of, especially the Anodite girl. Her powers were merely a fraction of her potential. So, Ben, Gwen said as they drove, did you finish that history paper? It's due tomorrow. ZS Scare blinked. School assignments were the least of his concerns, but he needed to maintain the illusion. Almost. Just need to wrap up the conclusion. Translation, he hasn't started it, Kevin smirked. I've been busy, ZS Scare replied, letting a hint of irritation enter his voice. Gwen sighed. You know, balancing hero work and school would be easier if you didn't spend so much time playing sumo slammers. I'll manage. ZS Scare looked out the window, watching the buildings of Bellwood pass by. So many humans, going about their meaningless lives, unaware of the cosmic forces at play around them. Unaware that their hero was now their greatest threat. The car fell silent as Kevin drove toward the industrial district. ZS Scare used the time to plan. Tonight would be his first public display of Ben's powers. He needed to be convincing, but he also wanted to test the limits of what he could do with the Omnitrix. The old steel mill came into view, a hulking silhouette against the night sky. Several trucks were parked outside, and figures in distinctive armor moved equipment between them. Looks like we're right on time, Kevin said, parking the car behind some abandoned machinery. They're still loading up. What's the plan? ZS Scare asked. Gwen gave him an odd look. You're asking us. Usually you just charge in shouting, it's hero time. ZS Scare realized his mistake. Just thought we could try something different for once. Be more tactical. Kevin snorted. Who are you and what have you done with Ben? The irony of the question made ZS Scare smile. Fine. Let's do this the usual way. He raised the Omnitrix. It's hero time. The familiar green flash lit up the night as Scare transformed. He'd chosen carefully during his preparation time, selecting an alien that would be both effective and allow him to stay at a distance from Gwen's magical senses. Jet Ray, he announced, spreading the amphibian's wings. That's more like it, Kevin said, placing his hand on the car and absorbing the metal. His skin transformed into living steel. Gwen's hands glowed with pink mana energy. Let's go. Scare took to the air, feeling the freedom of flight. This form was fast and agile, with powerful neuroshock blasts. Perfect for a first outing. From above, he could see about a dozen Forever Knights loading crates into the trucks. One larger crate glowed with an eerie blue light, presumably the weapon they were after. He swooped down, firing neuroshock blasts at the Knights. They scattered, drawing energy lances and firing up at him. The shapeshifter, one of them shouted. Protect the artifact. Scare dodged their energy bolts with ease. The amphibian's reflexes were impressive, but he could do better. Much better. He watched as Kevin charged into the fray, metallic fists smashing into knight armor. Gwen created shields and platforms of mana, corralling the knights and protecting civilians. They fought well together, Scare noted. A cohesive team. A team that would soon serve a new master. One of the knights fired a lucky shot that grazed Jetray's wing. Scare hissed in pain, genuine surprise registering at the sensation. Physical pain was so immediate in these forms. Ben, you okay? Gwen called up, concern in her voice. Fine, he called back, swooping toward the knight who'd shot him. Instead of another neuroshock blast, he grabbed the knight by his armor and lifted him high into the air. What are you doing with the artifact? He demanded, his voice cold and threatening. I'll tell you nothing, alien scum, the knight replied. Scare flew higher, until the knight's feet dangled 50 feet above the concrete. Perhaps I didn't make myself clear. He loosened his grip slightly, causing the knight to slip. Talk, or fall. Ben. Gwen shouted from below. What are you doing? Scare ignored her. Last chance, he told the knight. It's a power core, the knight blurted, panic overriding his loyalty. From an ancient alien ship. We're taking it to our headquarters to power a new weapon. Where is this headquarters? The old castle outside of town. Please don't drop me. Scare smiled coldly. Thank you for your cooperation. He glided back down and dropped the knight roughly on the ground. Gwen stared at him as he landed beside her. What was that about? We don't threaten to drop people. It worked, didn't it? Scare replied, tapping the Omnitrix symbol to transform again. Green light flashed, and he became Humongosaur. Now let's finish this. The transformation into the massive dinosaur-like alien gave him a rush of physical power. Scare roared, charging toward the remaining knights who were attempting to drive away with the artifact. He caught the lead truck, lifting it off the ground with ease. The knights inside abandoned the vehicle, fleeing into the night. Scare set the truck down and ripped open the cargo area, revealing the glowing blue container. That's it, Kevin said, joining him. Nice work, though you were a little intense with that flying interrogation. Whatever gets the job done, Scare replied, shrinking Humongosaur down to a more manageable size. Gwen approached the container cautiously, her hands glowing as she scanned it. It's definitely alien tech. Really old, too. We should call Grandpa Max about this. I'll handle it, Scare said quickly. The last person he wanted involved was Max Tennyson. The old plumber was too experienced, too observant. Let me just secure this first. He reached for the container, but Gwen created a mana shield between him and it. What are you doing? He demanded. We don't know what this is, Gwen said. We should wait for Grandpa. Since when do you rush to handle potentially dangerous alien tech yourself? ZS Scare realized he'd made another mistake. Ben would typically be more careless, more impulsive. You're right, he conceded, hitting the Omnitrix symbol to transform back to human form. Just thought I'd be responsible for once. Call Grandpa Max. Gwen lowered the shield but continued to give him a strange look. Kevin, meanwhile, examined the other crates the knights had been loading. Just standard weapons in these, he reported. Energy lances, some explosives. The blue thing is definitely the prize. Gwen took out her phone and dialed. Grandpa? It's Gwen. We've recovered some kind of alien power core from the Forever Knights. At the old steel mill. Yes, we're all fine. Okay, we'll wait here. She hung up. He's 10 minutes out. ZS Scare nodded, internally recalculating. Max Tennyson would be a challenge, but also an opportunity. If he could fool the old plumber, he could fool anyone. So what do we do while we wait? Kevin asked, kicking at one of the unconscious knights. I've got sumo slammer cards in my pocket, ZS Scare suggested, remembering details from Ben's room. Kevin and Gwen both stared at him. What? He asked. Since when do you carry those around on missions? Gwen asked. And since when do you suggest we play cards instead of, I don't know, getting smoothies or something? Kevin added. ZS Scare mentally cursed. These children were more observant than he'd anticipated. Just trying something new, he said with a shrug. Fine, smoothies after Max gets here. They fell into an awkward silence, with Gwen occasionally glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. ZS Scare pretended to check Ben's phone, but his mind was racing with plans and contingencies. Max Tennyson arrived in his RV, the familiar vehicle rumbling into the mill yard. The old man stepped out, dressed in his Hawaiian shirt but with a plumber badge visible on his belt. Kids. Good work, he called, approaching the container. Let's see what we've got here. ZS Scare tensed as Max examined the power core. This was the moment of truth. Max whistled. This is ancient technology. Possibly Galvan, from the early days of their space exploration. The Forever Knights must have found it in one of the old crash sites. Dangerous? Kevin asked. Very, Max confirmed. This could power a small city, or a very large weapon. Good thing you stopped them from taking it. Max turned to look at ZS Scare, and for a terrible moment, the ectonurite thought he saw suspicion in the old man's eyes. You okay, Ben? You're awfully quiet. ZS Scare forced Ben's face into a casual smile. Just tired, Grandpa. It's been a long day. Max studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. Well, I'll get a plumber team to transport this safely. You kids should get home. School night, right? Right, Gwen agreed. Come on, Ben, Kevin. Let's go get those smoothies before heading home. As they walked back to Kevin's car, ZS Scare could feel Gwen's eyes on him. She suspected something was wrong, but didn't know what. He would have to be more careful around her. But for now, he had passed the first test. He had fought as Ben, spoken as Ben, and not raised enough suspicion to be exposed. Each hour in control would make him more convincing, more entrenched in Ben Tennyson's life. Soon, no one would question him at all. Mr. Smoothie was busy despite the late hour. Teenagers clustered around tables, talking and laughing in the artificial light. ZS Scare found the noise irritating, but maintained Ben's relaxed posture as they ordered. The usual, the cashier asked when ZS Scare approached. He hesitated. What was the usual for Ben Tennyson? Actually, he said, I'm feeling different tonight. What do you recommend? The cashier blinked in surprise. The new blueberry banana blast is popular. Perfect, ZS Scare said, handing over money from Ben's wallet. He joined Kevin and Gwen at their table, setting down the unfamiliar drink. Gwen was sipping something pink, while Kevin had a chocolate concoction. Blueberry banana? Gwen asked, eyebrows raised. What happened to grasshopper and liver is the only real smoothie flavor? Z's scare nearly choked. Just trying something new, he repeated, the excuse wearing thin even to his own ears. Kevin leaned back in his chair. So what was with the interrogation technique back there? Since when do you dangle bad guys off buildings like some comic book vigilante? It worked, Z's scare said defensively. We got the information we needed. Yeah, but that's not how we do things, Gwen pressed. You're usually all about second chances and talking things out. Z's scare took a sip of the smoothie to buy time. The flavor was overwhelming, sweet and cold and utterly foreign to his ectoneurite sensibilities. He forced Ben's face not to grimace. Maybe I'm getting tired of the bad guys always coming back, he said finally. The Knights, the High Breed, Vilgax, we beat them, and they just keep coming back. Kevin nodded slowly. Can't argue with that. But still, not your style, dude. People change, Z's scare said, an edge creeping into his voice despite his efforts. In one day? Gwen asked skeptically. Z's scare realized he needed to redirect this conversation quickly. So, that history paper, he said, turning to Gwen. Any chance I could get some help with it tonight? The change of subject worked. Gwen rolled her eyes. I knew you hadn't started it. Fine, we can work on it at my place after this. Thanks, he said, forcing gratitude into his tone. Kevin finished his smoothie and stood up. While you two nerds do homework, I'm gonna see what I can find out about the Knights' headquarters. That castle the guy mentioned. Be careful, Gwen said, concern evident in her voice. Don't go in alone. Just reconnaissance, Kevin assured her, leaning down to kiss her cheek. Call you tomorrow. After Kevin left, Gwen turned her full attention to Z's scare. Okay, what's really going on with you? Nothing, he insisted, avoiding her gaze. Ben, I've known you since we were kids. Something's off. You're acting weird, making different choices, even ordering different smoothies. Did something happen today? Z's scare considered his options. Denial wasn't working. Perhaps a half-truth would be more effective. I had a close call today, he said quietly. Before you guys picked me up. Just some drones, like I said, but I don't know. It made me think about how we do things. Maybe we need to be tougher. Gwen's expression softened. Why didn't you say something earlier? Didn't want to make a big deal out of it, he shrugged. Can we drop it now? Please. She studied him for another moment, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. But if something's bothering you, you can talk to me. That's what family is for. I know, he said, finishing the smoothie to hide his disgust at the sentiment. These human relationships were so complicated, so messy. But useful. Very useful for maintaining his cover. They drove to Gwen's house in relative silence. Her parents greeted them warmly, completely unaware that the cousin they welcomed was not Ben Tennyson at all, but an ancient alien consciousness wearing his form. Upstairs in Gwen's room, they sat at her desk with history books spread out between them. So the paper is on the influence of the French Revolution on modern democratic principles, Gwen explained. Did you at least do the reading? Not exactly, Z's scare admitted, scanning the book titles. Earth history was irrelevant to his plans, but he needed to maintain Ben's academic presence. Gwen sighed and opened her laptop. Okay, let's start with an outline. The main points you'll want to cover are, as she spoke, Z's scare's attention wandered to the spell books visible on her bookshelf. Arcane knowledge that might be useful to him. The girl had no idea of her true potential as an Anodite. Perhaps, in time, he could exploit that power for his own ends. Ben. Are you listening? Sorry, he said, focusing back on her. Just tired. Go on. They worked for an hour on the paper, with Gwen providing most of the content while Scare typed. The mundane task was maddening to his ancient intellect, but he endured it for the sake of his disguise. "That should be enough to get you started," Gwen said finally. "You can finish the conclusion yourself." "Thanks," he said, saving the file to a USB drive she provided. "I appreciate it." "No problem." She hesitated, then added, "Ben, whatever's going on with you, just be careful, okay? You know how you get sometimes, pushing yourself too hard." "I'll be fine," he assured her, standing to leave. "See you tomorrow." Walking back to Ben's home, Scare allowed himself a small smile. Despite a few missteps, his first day as Ben Tennyson had been successful. He had fought alongside the team, interacted with family members, and established a foundation for his continued deception. Tomorrow, he would begin the next phase, exploring the full potential of the Omnitrix under his control. And soon after that, he would start eliminating threats to his new existence, beginning with the most dangerous, Gwen Tennyson and her magical senses. Scare lay on Ben's bed that night, staring at the ceiling as the human body refused to immediately sleep. The limitations of flesh were irritating, but necessary to endure for now. He raised the wrist with the Omnitrix, studying the device in the dim light. Such power, contained in such a deceptively simple form. Azimuth was truly a genius, if a misguided one. "The things I could do with this," he whispered, tracing the alien metal with Ben's fingers. "The things I will do." He closed his eyes, focusing his consciousness inward, seeking any trace of Ben Tennyson's mind. There, a faint flicker, like a candle nearly extinguished. The boy's consciousness wasn't completely gone, merely suppressed to the point of impotence. "Still there, are you?" Scare murmured. "Watching helplessly as I take your life for my own. How does it feel, child?" No response came, but Scare hadn't expected one. Ben was too weak, too overwhelmed by the possession to fight back yet. Yet. That was the key word. Eventually, the boy might gather strength, might attempt to reclaim his body. Scare would need to be vigilant against any internal resistance. His thoughts drifted to the power core they'd recovered from the Forever Knights. Max Tennyson had taken it for safekeeping, but such technology could be immensely useful to Scare's plans. Perhaps a visit to Plumber headquarters was in order. As sleep finally began to claim the human body, Scare allowed himself to slip into unconsciousness with a final thought: tomorrow, Ben Tennyson would wake up, go to school, interact with friends, and be the hero everyone expected. But behind those familiar green eyes, Scare would be watching, learning, and planning the downfall of everything Ben Tennyson had ever fought to protect. School was even more tedious than Scare had anticipated. Humans droning on about mathematics and literature, surrounded by adolescents with their petty concerns and hormonal drama. He sat at Ben's desk, maintaining a facade of attention while his mind wandered to greater things. "Mr. Tennyson," the history teacher called, snapping him back to awareness. "Since you've been paying such close attention, perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on the Treaty of Versailles." Scare blinked, searching Ben's accessible memories for any information on the subject. Nothing useful came up. "It was significant," he offered lamely. Laughter rippled through the classroom. The teacher sighed. "See me after class, Mr. Tennyson. Your recent test scores suggest you need to focus more on academics and less on whatever has you distracted." "Yes, sir," Scare replied, forcing down the urge to transform and show this insignificant human true power. Patience, he reminded himself. Establish the deception completely before making any moves that might expose him. The girl sitting next to him, Julie, according to Ben's memories, gave him a sympathetic smile. "Don't worry about it," she whispered. "We can study together later if you want." Scare nodded, recalling that this human was Ben's girlfriend. Another complication. Romantic attachments were foreign to ectonurite culture, but he would need to maintain this relationship to avoid suspicion. That would be nice, he whispered back. After class, he endured a lecture from the teacher about applying himself and living up to his potential. The irony almost made him laugh aloud. If only this human knew the potential that truly existed within the being he was addressing. In the hallway afterward, Julie caught up with him, her tennis bag slung over her shoulder. "Hey, we still on for the movie tonight?" she asked, falling into step beside him. Movie? Z's scare searched Ben's memories again, finding a vague plan to see some new science fiction film. "Of course," he said. "Wouldn't miss it." "Great." She smiled, then frowned slightly. "Are you feeling okay? You seem different today." That question again. First Gwen, now Julie. These humans were more perceptive than he'd given them credit for. "Just tired," he said, the excuse becoming his standard response. "Been busy with, hero stuff." Julie's frown deepened. "You promised you'd balance that better. After what happened last month with the Vriedel brothers and our missed anniversary." Anniversary? Z's scare had no idea what incident she was referring to. I know, he said hastily. "I'm trying. Tonight will be different. Promise." Her expression softened. "Okay. Meet you at the theater at 7. "Perfect," he agreed, relieved to have navigated another potential pitfall. She stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek before hurrying off to tennis practice. The sensation was bizarre. Physical affection was not something ectonurites practiced. He touched the spot where her lips had been, analyzing the strange emotions the action had triggered in Ben's body. Biochemical responses, nothing more. Easily ignored. The rest of the school day passed in a blur of mundane activities. Z's scare maintained his cover, speaking only when necessary, observing the dynamics of Ben's social circle. He handed in a history paper Gwen had helped with, avoided the gym class by claiming illness, physical exertion for no purpose seemed pointless, and declined an invitation to hang out at the arcade after school. Finally, the bell rang, releasing him from the prison of human education. He walked quickly from the building, eager to get back to Ben's room where he could experiment with the Omnitrix without observation. His phone buzzed with a text from Kevin, "Found the castle. Need to check it out tonight. You in?" Z's scare smiled. The Forever Knights headquarters could contain valuable technology or information. More importantly, it would give him another opportunity to showcase Ben's powers in a more aggressive, less restrained way. To start shifting everyone's expectations of how Ben Tennyson operated. He texted back, "I'm in. After my date with Julie." Kevin's response came quickly, "Date night, huh? Don't be late, lover boy. Meeting at Gwen's at 10. Z's scare put the phone away, mentally adjusting his schedule. Movie with Julie at 7. Mission with Kevin and Gwen at 10. Plenty of time for both, and for what he really wanted to do in between. When he reached Ben's home, he went straight to the bedroom and locked the door. Sandra called something about a snack, but he ignored her, focused on his real purpose. "Now," he whispered, activating the Omnitrix. "Let's see what else this device can really do." He cycled through aliens quickly, transforming into Swampfire, then Echo, then Chromastone. Each transformation was effortless, the power flowing through him as naturally as thought. But the true test would be combining abilities. In his previous encounters with Ben, Z's scare had been limited to his ectonurite form. Now, he wanted to see if he could blend the powers of different aliens, something Ben had never attempted. He transformed into Ghostfreak, his natural form, then focused intensely on the Omnitrix symbol. Instead of a full transformation, he concentrated on accessing just the abilities of Heat Blast. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, flames began to dance along Ghostfreak's spectral arms. Yes. Z's scare exulted, watching as the ghostly tendrils became wreathed in fire. Hybrid transformation. He let the flames die away, then focused again, this time on Big Chill's cryokinetic abilities. Frost formed around his claws, the temperature in the room dropping noticeably. The boy never even considered this possibility, he murmured, frost crystals forming in the air around him. The Omnitrix doesn't just transform the user, it contains the genetic memory of thousands of species. With the right focus, they can be accessed simultaneously. A knock at the door interrupted his experimentation. Ben. Are you okay in there? I heard strange noises. Sandra's voice, concerned. Scare quickly transformed back to human form. I'm fine, Mom. Just, watching a video. Well, don't forget about your date with Julie tonight. I won't. He heard her footsteps recede down the hallway. That had been close. Too close. He would need a more secure location for his experiments. But the possibilities he'd uncovered were thrilling. Hybrid transformations, accessing multiple alien abilities simultaneously, these were powers Ben Tennyson had never tapped into. Powers that would make Scare nearly invincible once mastered. He checked the time. Almost 6. He needed to get ready for this date with Julie. Another tedious human ritual to endure for the sake of his disguise. But after that, the Forever Knight's castle awaited. And with it, the chance to test his growing powers in battle. The movie theater was crowded, humans pressed together in a line that stretched around the building. Scare stood among them, uncomfortable with the proximity but maintaining Ben's relaxed posture. Julie spotted him and waved, breaking away from a group of girls she'd been chatting with. Hey, she greeted him with a smile. I was worried you might not make it. I said I would, Scare replied, attempting to return her smile naturally. I know, but you know how it is, alien invasion, robot attack, the usual Ben Tennyson emergencies. She winked to show she was teasing, but there was a hint of genuine concern behind her words. No emergencies tonight, he assured her. Just us. The line moved forward, and they reached the ticket counter. Scare purchased 2 tickets for the science fiction film advertised on the marquee, Cosmic Convergence, When Worlds Collide. Inside, the theater was dark and noisy, humans chattering as advertisements played on the massive screen. Julie led the way to seats near the back, and Scare followed, noting how she automatically reached for his hand as they walked. The physical contact was strange but not entirely unpleasant. Ben's body responded to her touch with automatic biochemical reactions, increased heart rate, endorphin release. Fascinating how these human emotions manifested physically. They settled into their seats, and Julie leaned her head against his shoulder. This is nice, she said softly. Just a normal date night. No aliens, no bad guys, no Omnitrix emergencies. Yes, Scare agreed, thinking of the mission with Kevin and Gwen scheduled for later. Normal. The movie began, a predictably simplistic human interpretation of space travel and alien contact. Scare found it amusing how wrong they were about virtually everything, but he feigned interest for Julie's benefit. Halfway through the film, a scene showed the alien antagonists possessing human hosts. Scare stiffened involuntarily. The portrayal was absurd, nothing like the subtle, complete domination he had achieved over Ben Tennyson, but the parallel was uncomfortably close to his current situation. You okay? Julie whispered, noticing his reaction. Fine, he whispered back. Just, thinking how unrealistic that is. She smirked. Says the guy who turns into aliens for a living. Exactly. I know how it really works. After the movie, they walked to a nearby cafe for ice cream. Another new sensation for Scare, cold sweetness that Ben's taste buds found appealing but that seemed excessive to his ectoneurite sensibilities. So what did you think? Julie asked, spooning chocolate ice cream into her mouth. About the movie? It was entertaining. Scare chose his words carefully. The science was completely wrong, of course. Julie laughed. Well, Yeah. But that's not really the point of movies like that. It's about the story, the characters. I suppose. He took another bite of vanilla ice cream, analyzing the flavor. The protagonist was foolish. He should have used the alien technology when he had the chance, instead of destroying it. Julie gave him an odd look. But then the aliens would have had a way to track Earth. He sacrificed the technology to save everyone. A short-sighted decision, Scare said dismissively. With that level of advanced tech, he could have developed defenses far beyond what the aliens possessed. Assured Earth's safety permanently. That's not very hero-like thinking, Julie said slowly. Since when are you into weapons escalation? Scare realized. He'd made another mistake. Ben would have approved of the protagonist's self-sacrificing choice. Just playing devil's advocate, he said quickly. You know me, always looking at all angles. No, you're really not, Julie countered. You're usually pretty straightforward about what's right and wrong. That's one of the things I like about you. The conversation was veering into dangerous territory. Scare checked the time on Ben's phone, 9:15. Almost time to meet Kevin and Gwen. Sorry, you're right, he conceded. Maybe I'm just tired. Been a long day. Julie studied him for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. Okay. But you know you can talk to me if something's bothering you, right? Is it alien stuff? School stuff? Just stuff, he said vaguely. Nothing important. Hey, I hate to cut this short, but I just remembered I promised to help Gwen with something tonight. Now. Julie's disappointment was evident. But we were supposed to hang out after the movie. I know, and I'm sorry. It's just, important. Plumber stuff. She sighed. Fine. Go save the world. Again. I'll make it up to you, he promised, standing to leave. Tomorrow. Sure, she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Tomorrow. Scare felt a strange twinge in Ben's chest, guilt. An unexpected emotional response from the human body he inhabited. Irrelevant. The mission with Kevin and Gwen was far more important than maintaining this relationship facade. He left Julie at the cafe, walking quickly toward Gwen's house. The night air was cool, the streets quiet. Perfect conditions for what was to come. At Gwen's house, Kevin's car was already parked outside. Scare knocked on the door, and Gwen answered, dressed in her usual outfit but with the addition of a light jacket. Hey, she greeted him. How was the date? Fine, he replied, stepping inside. Where's Kevin? Garage, checking his gear. Gwen led him through the house. My parents are out for the evening, so we can talk freely. Kevin was sorting through a collection of alien tech gadgets spread out on a workbench. He looked up as they entered. Lover boy made it, he commented. Thought you might ditch us for another milkshake with Julie. This is important, Scare said. The nights need to be stopped. Kevin raised an eyebrow at his serious tone but nodded. Got that right. Here's what I found out, the castle is about 20 miles outside town, hidden in the forests north of here. Old stone place, probably brought over from Europe brick by brick knowing those medieval fanatics. Security? Gwen asked. Standard night stuff. Energy lances, some battle drones, a couple of those dragon robots they like. Nothing we haven't handled before. And inside? Scare pressed. What are they doing with the technology they're gathering? Kevin shrugged. That's what we're going to find out. My source says they've been collecting alien power sources for months now. The one we nabbed yesterday was just the latest. Then let's go, Scare said impatiently. The longer we wait, the more time they have to prepare whatever weapon they're building. Whoa, eager much? Kevin said. What happened to let's get smoothies first, Ben? I told you, people change, Scare snapped. Are we doing this or not? Gwen and Kevin exchanged looks. Yeah, we're doing it, Kevin said slowly. But we're doing recon first. In and out, no engagement unless necessary. Scare nodded, though inwardly he had no intention of merely observing. Tonight would be an opportunity to test his growing control of the Omnitrix, and to eliminate a potential threat to his plans. They piled into Kevin's car, Scare in the back seat again. As they drove toward the outskirts of Bellwood, he stared out the window, mentally preparing for the battle to come. So, Ben, Gwen said, breaking the silence. Did you finish that history paper? Yes, he replied curtly, not wanting to engage in small talk. Wow, responsible Ben. First you show up on time for the mission, now you're doing homework without being nagged. Who are you and what have you done with my cousin? The irony of her question made Scare smile coldly. Maybe I'm just growing up. It's more than that, she persisted. You've been different since yesterday. More serious, more. I don't know. Intense. Drop it, Gwen, he said sharply. Kevin glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Dude, chill. She's just concerned. Scare took a deep breath, forcing Ben's body to relax. Sorry. I'm just focused on the mission. The rest of the drive passed in uncomfortable silence. Scare could feel Gwen's suspicious glances but ignored them. She was perceptive, too perceptive. He would need to deal with her soon. Kevin turned onto a dirt road, cutting the headlights as they entered the forest. We go on foot from here, he said, parking behind a thick cluster of trees. Castle's about half a mile that way. They exited the car, moving silently through the forest. The night was clear, moonlight filtering through the branches and illuminating their path. Scare followed behind Gwen and Kevin, watching their movements, analyzing their tactics. Soon, the castle came into view through the trees, a looming stone structure that seemed out of place in the American countryside. Lights glowed in the windows, and forever night guards patrolled the walls. Looks like they're expecting company, Kevin whispered, pointing to the increased security. We need to get inside, Gwen said. See what they're building with those power sources. Scare stepped forward. I'll go. I can transform and get past their defenses. We stick together, Gwen insisted. That's inefficient, he argued. I can move faster alone, and I have the Omnitrix. You two can create a diversion if needed. Kevin and Gwen exchanged another look. Fine, Kevin relented. But at the first sign of trouble, you call us in. No hero solo acts. Agreed, Scare said, already activating the Omnitrix. He cycled through the aliens quickly, selecting Big Chill. The transformation washed over him, Ben's form disappearing in a flash of green light. The Necrophrygian's ghostly blue form felt natural to him, not as familiar as his ectoneurite body, but similar in its intangibility. He spread the moth-like wings, looking back at Gwen and Kevin. I'll be back soon, he said in Big Chill's raspy voice. Be ready. Without waiting for a response, he turned invisible and flew toward the castle. The Forever Knight's thermal sensors might detect him, but by then it would be too late. As he approached the castle walls, he went intangible, passing through the solid stone with ease. Inside, knights hurried through corridors, their medieval armor contrasting with the advanced technology they carried. Scare followed them, staying invisible as they led him deeper into the castle. Finally, they entered a large chamber that had been converted into a laboratory. In the center stood a massive device, a ring-shaped structure surrounding a platform, with cables connecting it to various power sources. One of the knights removed his helmet, revealing an older man with a gray beard. The teleportation gate is nearly complete, he announced to the others. Once we integrate the Galvan power core, we can open a portal directly to the alien weapons cache. And what of Tennyson and his team? Another knight asked. They cost us the power core yesterday. A temporary setback, the leader dismissed. We have located another source. And if Tennyson interferes again, we will be ready. ZS Scare had heard enough. A teleportation gate could be extremely valuable, not just for the Knight's purposes, but for his own. With such technology, he could access locations across the galaxy, gather resources for his true plans. He flew back outside, turning visible once clear of the castle. Kevin and Gwen were waiting anxiously where he'd left them. Well? Kevin asked as Big Chill landed. They're building a teleportation gate, ZS Scare reported. Using the power cores to open a portal to some alien weapons cache. That's not good, Gwen said. If the Knights get access to advanced alien weapons, we need to destroy it, ZS Scare stated flatly. Now, before they can activate it. Hold up, Kevin cautioned. We should call in the plumbers, get backup. There's no time, ZS Scare insisted. They're already preparing to integrate another power source to replace the one we took yesterday. Then we disable it, Gwen suggested. Sabotage it so it can't work, then call for backup. ZS Scare considered. Destroying the gate would be wasteful, it could be useful to him later. But disabling it temporarily would serve his immediate needs and maintain his cover as Ben. Agreed, he said finally. We go in, disable the gate, get out. Quick and clean. That's more like the Ben I know, Gwen said with evident relief. What's the plan? ZS Scare hit the Omnitrix symbol, transforming back to human form. I'll go in as Swampfire, create a distraction. Kevin, you find the main power conduits and overload them. Gwen, you focus on keeping the Knights off our backs. They nodded, accepting his leadership without question. It was remarkable how much authority Ben Tennyson commanded within this small team. Let's move, Kevin said, absorbing the metal from a piece of equipment he'd brought along. His body transformed into living steel, ready for combat. Gwen's hands glowed with mana as she prepared her spells. Ready when you are. ZS Scare activated the Omnitrix again, transforming into Swampfire. The plant-based alien's form was unusual to him, but powerful, regenerative abilities, control over plants, and fire projection. Now, he shouted, charging toward the castle gates. The Knights on guard barely had time to react before a barrage of fireballs struck the walls around them. Alarms blared as ZS Scare tore through the outer defenses, Gwen and Kevin close behind. Knights poured from the castle, energy lances firing at the intruders. Gwen created a mana shield, deflecting their shots as Kevin charged through their ranks, his metal fists sending armored bodies flying. ZS Scare fought with controlled fury, using Swampfire's abilities to their fullest. Vines erupted from the ground at his command, entangling Knights and crushing their weapons. Fireballs struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling rather than killing. He still needed to maintain Ben's heroic image, after all. They fought their way into the castle, down corridors and through chambers, until they reached the laboratory. The teleportation gate hummed with energy, technicians working frantically to stabilize it as alarms blared throughout the structure. Stop them, the bearded leader shouted. Protect the gate at all costs. Knights surrounded them, energy lances pointed at the trio. ZS Scare assessed the situation quickly. Direct confrontation would be inefficient. Gwen, shield, he called. Kevin, the power conduits, there. He pointed to a bank of equipment against the far wall. Gwen created a dome of mana energy around them as Kevin broke away, smashing through the Knight's line toward the power systems. ZS Scare hit the Omnitrix symbol, transforming into Echo. The small, silicon-based alien's form was perfect for what he planned next. He multiplied instantly, creating a dozen duplicates that scattered throughout the chamber, each one emitting a focused sonic scream. Knights clutched their heads in pain as the overlapping sonic attacks disoriented them. Glass shattered, equipment sparked and smoked. ZS Scare directed his duplicates strategically, disabling weapons and communications while avoiding critical damage to the gate itself. Kevin reached the power conduits, ripping open panels to expose the circuitry within. "I need about 30 seconds, he shouted over the chaos. "You've got it." Gwen called back, expanding her shield to push back the advancing knights. ZS Scare merged his Echo duplicates back into a single form, then hit the Omnitrix again. Green light flashed, and he transformed into Brainstorm, the cerebrocrustacean's massive brain crackling with electrical energy. "Allow me to accelerate the process," he said in Brainstorm's formal, articulated voice. He fired a precise electrical blast at the exposed circuitry Kevin had revealed. The effect was immediate. Power surged through the systems, overloading safety protocols. The teleportation gate sputtered and sparked, the energy field within it destabilizing. "It's going to blow," one of the technicians shouted, abandoning his post and running for the exit. "All knights, evacuate," the leader commanded, following his subordinates in a tactical retreat. "We should do the same," Gwen urged, maintaining her shield as they backed toward the door. "Not yet," ZS Scare said, transforming again, this time into Jetray. "I need to make sure it's completely disabled." Before they could stop him, he darted toward the gate, weaving through cascading electrical discharges. Using Jetray's speed and agility, he examined the control systems, memorizing their configuration even as they failed catastrophically. "Ben!" Kevin shouted. "Get out of there." ZS Scare ignored him, firing neuroshock blasts at specific components, not to destroy them further, but to preserve critical elements that would be useful to him later. Knowledge was power, and the knight's teleportation technology could serve his purposes well. Only when he was satisfied did he swoop back toward his teammates, grabbing them both and accelerating toward the exit as the chamber began to collapse behind them. "Are you crazy?" Gwen demanded as they burst from the castle just ahead of a massive explosion. "You could have been killed." "I knew what I was doing," ZS Scare replied, setting them down at the forest's edge. Behind them, the castle's central tower collapsed in on itself, flames licking at the ancient stones. Knights fled in disarray, their carefully laid plans literally going up in smoke. "Well," Kevin said as ZS Scare transformed back to human form, "that was more destruction than I had in mind for a recon mission." "They can't use what they don't have," ZS Scare replied coldly. "Problem solved." "Yeah, but..." Gwen gestured at the burning castle. "This is a bit extreme, even for us. We could have disabled it without leveling the place." ZS Scare shrugged. They were building a device to access alien weapons. Weapons they would have used against us and innocent people. "I don't see the problem." Kevin and Gwen exchanged concerned looks again, a pattern that was becoming annoying to ZS Scare. "Let's get out of here before the authorities show up," Kevin suggested, leading them back toward where they'd parked. As they drove away from the burning castle, sirens wailing in the distance, ZS Scare stared out the window with satisfaction. Not only had he established himself as more aggressive and decisive than Ben typically was, but he'd gathered valuable information about teleportation technology that would serve his future plans. And most importantly, he'd taken another step toward convincing Ben's team that his new approach was necessary, even beneficial. Soon, they would accept that new Ben without question. And then, when they least expected it, he would reveal his true nature, and true power. Back at Gwen's house, they gathered in the garage to debrief. Kevin paced anxiously while Gwen sat on the workbench, her expression troubled. "We should call Grandpa Max," she said finally. "Report what happened." "Why?" ZS Scare asked. "We completed the mission. The knight's plan was stopped." "Because we just blew up a castle," Kevin exclaimed. "That's not exactly keeping a low profile." "Since when do you care about keeping a low profile?" ZS Scare countered. "You're the one who's always ready to smash things." "Yeah, but..." Kevin ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I'm all for breaking stuff when it needs breaking, but that was different." "You were different." "Kevin's right," Gwen said quietly. "Ben, you've been acting strange ever since yesterday." More aggressive, more ruthless. It's not like you. ZS Scare realized he'd pushed too far, too fast. He needed to backpedal, to maintain his disguise until he was ready to reveal himself. "I'm sorry," he said, forcing contrition into his voice. "I got caught up in the moment. Those nights, what they were planning, it made me angry." Gwen's expression softened slightly. "It's not just tonight. It's been building. The way you interrogated that night yesterday, how you've been talking, even the way you fight. Something's changed." ZS Scare sat down heavily, adopting a posture of exhaustion. "Maybe you're right," he admitted. "I've been feeling different lately. Like there's this pressure building inside me." It was a calculated admission, close enough to the truth to be convincing, vague enough to deflect their real concerns. "Why didn't you say something?" Gwen asked, moving to sit beside him. "I didn't want to worry you," he said. "And I wasn't sure what was happening myself. Maybe it's the Omnitrix, or maybe it's just growing up. Realizing that sometimes you have to be tougher to protect what matters." Kevin leaned against the wall, his expression skeptical but concerned. "If something's wrong with the watch, we should talk to Azimuth." "No," ZS Scare said quickly, then moderated his tone. "I mean, not yet. Let me try to figure this out myself first. It's probably nothing." "Promise me you'll tell us if it gets worse," Gwen insisted, placing a hand on his arm. "Whatever's happening, we're a team. We face things together." ZS Scare nodded, suppressing his disgust at her sentimentality. "I promise." The lie came easily, another step in his ongoing deception. Let them believe Ben was struggling with some inner darkness. It would make the truth all the more devastating when it was finally revealed. "It's late," Kevin said, checking his watch. "We should get some rest. Been a long day." ZS Scare stood, eager to escape their scrutiny. "Yeah. I'll see you guys tomorrow." As he walked home through the quiet streets of Bellwood, he reviewed the day's events with satisfaction. Despite a few missteps, he was solidifying his position as Ben Tennyson. The suspicion from Gwen and Kevin was manageable, natural concern for their friend's apparent personality changes. And meanwhile, he was gathering knowledge, testing the limits of the Omnitrix, preparing for the larger plans that would soon come to fruition. Ben Tennyson's life was his now. And soon, much more would be. In the darkness of Ben's room that night, ZS Scare sat cross-legged on the bed, eyes closed, focusing inward. He was probing the boundaries of Ben's suppressed consciousness, testing the strength of his dominance. There, a flicker of resistance. Stronger than before. The boy was fighting back, however feebly. "Interesting," ZS Scare murmured. "You've got more spirit than I gave you credit for, Tennyson." He pushed against the resistance, feeling it bend but not break. Ben's consciousness was gathering strength, drawing on his connection to the Omnitrix perhaps, or simply his own stubborn will. It wasn't enough to threaten ZS Scare's control, not yet, but it was a development worth monitoring. If Ben was growing stronger, ZS Scare would need to accelerate his plans. A soft glow emanated from the Omnitrix as he contemplated his next moves. The device seemed almost aware of the internal struggle, responding to subtle fluctuations in Ben's consciousness. "The Omnitrix is bonded to you," ZS Scare acknowledged, speaking to the suppressed mind. "But it responds to the dominant consciousness, mine. You cannot use it against me." No response came, but the resistance remained, a dull pressure at the edges of ZS Scare's awareness. He opened Ben's eyes, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would require a different approach. He had established Ben as more aggressive, more ruthless. Now he needed to temper that image, present a more balanced facade to allay suspicions. And he needed to learn more about the Omnitrix's full capabilities. The hybrid transformations he discovered were just the beginning. There had to be other functions, other secrets that even Azimuth had not revealed. ZS Scare smiled Ben's smile, a cold expression in the darkened room. Rest while you can, Tennyson, he whispered to the suppressed consciousness. Gather your strength if you must. It will make no difference in the end. He settled back on the bed, allowing the human body to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities, new challenges. And one step closer to his ultimate goal. Chapter 2, Rising Power. Morning sunlight filtered through Ben's bedroom window, casting warm patterns across the floor. Z's scare opened Ben's eyes slowly, the brightness and irritation to his ectoneurite sensibilities. Another night of experimenting with the connection between his consciousness and Ben's body had yielded interesting results. The boy's resistance remained, but Z's scare had discovered new ways to suppress it. Another day in your insignificant life, Tennyson, he murmured, stretching Ben's limbs and feeling the human body respond to his commands with increasing naturalness. After nearly a week of possession, the physical form felt less alien to him. He was adapting, learning the subtle nuances of human physicality. The Omnitrix gleamed on his wrist, and he smiled. His experiments had progressed faster than expected. The hybrid transformations were becoming easier to maintain, allowing him to access multiple alien abilities simultaneously. Power that Ben Tennyson had never dreamed of using was now at Z's scare's disposal. He got up and prepared for the day, maintaining the facade of normal teenage life. Sandra called from downstairs about breakfast, and he responded with practiced casualness. The routine was tedious but necessary. Each mundane interaction strengthened his position, cemented his deception. As he headed downstairs, his phone buzzed with a text from Gwen, plumber alert. Strange energy signatures downtown. Meet at Mr. Smoothie in 20. Perfect timing. He needed to continue adjusting their perception of Ben's changing personality, pushing the boundaries of aggression while being careful not to raise too much suspicion. Going out, Mom, he called, grabbing a piece of toast on his way to the door. Meeting Gwen and Kevin. But you hardly ate anything. Sandra protested. Hero business, he replied with Ben's casual shrug. Can't keep the bad guys waiting. Downtown Bellwood was in chaos. A swirling vortex of purplish energy had opened above the central plaza, and strange crystalline creatures poured through, their sharp limbs slicing through anything they touched. Civilians ran screaming as the creatures advanced, methodically destroying infrastructure. Z's scare found Kevin and Gwen already on scene, Kevin's body coated in concrete as he grappled with one of the larger creatures. Gwen maintained a mana shield protecting a group of trapped office workers. About time. Kevin shouted as Z's scare approached. What did you do? Stop for a smoothie first. Analyzed the situation, Z's scare replied coolly, activating the Omnitrix. He cycled through aliens quickly, selecting Diamond Head. The transformation washed over him in a flash of green light. Crystalline armor formed around his body as he became the Petrosapien. Perfect for this situation, the attacking creatures appeared to be silicon-based, and Diamond Head's powers would be particularly effective. What are these things? He called to Gwen, firing crystal shards that impaled several of the smaller creatures. Some kind of dimensional breach, she replied, expanding her shield to cover more civilians. They started coming through about 10 minutes ago. No communication attempts, just attack. Z's scare nodded, charging into battle. He fought with calculated precision, each movement designed to maximize damage while minimizing effort. Unlike Ben's usual frenetic fighting style, Z's scare was methodical, almost surgical in his attacks. He created a massive crystal barrier between the creatures and a group of fleeing humans, then charged toward the vortex itself. This was an opportunity to test something new. What are you doing? Kevin shouted as Diamond Head approached the swirling breach. Z's scare didn't respond. Instead, he concentrated on the Omnitrix symbol embedded in his chest. Without fully transforming, he accessed a portion of Heat Blast's abilities, channeling them through Diamond Head's form. His crystalline hands began to glow red-hot, the temperature rising until the crystals themselves seemed to be made of molten glass. With a powerful thrust, he plunged his superheated hands into the vortex. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The dimensional breach reacted violently to the hybrid powers, its energy patterns destabilizing. The vortex began to collapse in on itself, the purple energy darkening to almost black. "Ben, get back!" Gwen screamed, sensing the imminent explosion. Z's scare withdrew just in time as the portal imploded with a thunderous boom. The remaining creatures screeched in alien agony as they were pulled back through, their connection to their home dimension severed. When the light and noise faded, Z's scare stood alone in the center of the plaza, Diamond Head's form unmarked by the explosion. Around him, the destruction was extensive: shattered windows, cracked pavement, overturned vehicles. He tapped the Omnitrix symbol and reverted to Ben's human form as Gwen and Kevin approached cautiously. "What did you just do?" Gwen asked, her voice mixture of awe and concern. "Closed the breach," Z's scare said simply. "Yeah, we saw that part," Kevin replied. "But how? That wasn't just Diamond Head. Your hands were glowing like heat blast." Z's scare smiled, offering the explanation he'd prepared. "I've been practicing. Found out I can access multiple alien abilities at once if I concentrate hard enough." That's not how the Omnitrix works," Gwen said, frowning. "Apparently it is," he countered. "Ben never pushed the limits enough to find out." Kevin and Gwen exchanged that look again, the one that signaled their growing concern about their friend's behavior. "You're talking about yourself in the third person now?" Kevin asked, his tone deliberately casual. Z's scare realized his slip. "Figure of speech," he said quickly. "I meant I never pushed the limits before." Gwen didn't look convinced, but before she could press further, reporters arrived on the scene, cameras flashing as they captured images of the aftermath and the three heroes standing amidst the destruction. "Ben Tennyson," one reporter called out, thrusting a microphone toward him. "You saved the city again. Can you tell us what those creatures were?" Z's scare stepped forward, seeing an opportunity to further cement his position in the public eye. "Interdimensional invaders," he said confidently. "Nothing Bellwood's defenders couldn't handle." "Your method seemed more aggressive than usual," another reporter noted. "That explosion could have caused serious damage." "Sometimes decisive action is necessary," Z's scare replied, his voice taking on an edge of authority that Ben rarely displayed. "The old ways of fighting aren't always enough. Evolution is inevitable, even for heroes." Gwen stepped beside him, subtly nudging him back from the cameras. "What Ben means is that we adapt our tactics to the situation," she explained smoothly. "Today required quick thinking and yes, forceful action. But public safety is always our top priority." The media seemed to accept this, their questions turning to details about the creatures and the damage assessment. As the interview continued, Z's scare felt a wave of frustration from deep within, Ben's consciousness, reacting to his words, trying to fight through the possession. He suppressed it easily, pushing Ben's awareness back down. Still, it was concerning that the boy could react to external stimuli. He was growing stronger, more aware of what was happening around him. After the reporters dispersed and cleanup crews arrived, Kevin pulled him aside behind a damaged bus. "Okay, what's the deal with the new powers?" he demanded. "And don't give me that pushing the limits crap. Something's different about you." "I told you before, I'm changing," Z's scare replied. "Growing up, getting stronger. Is that so hard to believe?" "It's not about the power," Gwen said, joining them. "It's how you're using it. That blast today, you didn't even try less destructive options first." "There wasn't time," he argued. "And it worked, didn't it? Problem solved, people saved. Isn't that what matters?" "The way we do things matters too," Gwen insisted. "Ben, I'm worried about you. First the Knights, now this, you're acting like." "Like what?" he challenged. "Like someone else," she finished quietly. For a moment, the three stood in tense silence. Z's scare calculated his options. Denial wasn't working anymore. A new approach was needed. Maybe I am someone else, he said finally. Maybe the Ben you knew was too weak, too hesitant. Too afraid of his own power. Is that really who you want protecting the Earth? Kevin's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying I've changed. For the better. And if you can't accept that, maybe we have a problem. Gwen reached out, placing a hand on his arm. Ben, please. If something's happening to you, we can help. Is it the Omnitrix? Is it affecting your mind somehow? Her touch was gentle, concerned, and the perfect opportunity to test another theory. Z's scare concentrated, allowing a tiny portion of his true ectonurite energy to seep through Ben's skin. Gwen jerked her hand back with a gasp, her eyes widening. What was that? What was what? He asked innocently. I felt something. Cold. Alien. She looked at her hand, then back at his face, real fear showing in her eyes for the first time. Ben. Probably residual energy from the portal, he suggested smoothly. Nothing to worry about. But he could see she wasn't convinced. The Anodite's magical senses had detected something beyond the physical. This was both a problem and an opportunity. Her suspicions were growing, but so was her uncertainty, and uncertain enemies made mistakes. I should go, he said abruptly. I promised Julie I'd meet her for lunch. Ben, wait, Gwen called, but he was already walking away, his mind racing with new plans, new contingencies. Gwen was becoming dangerous. Her magical abilities made her uniquely capable of sensing his true nature. She would need to be dealt with, and soon. But first, there was Julie. Another relationship to maintain, another mask to wear. The human concept of romance remained alien to him, but he was learning to mimic the appropriate behaviors. And Julie, unlike Gwen, had no magical senses to detect the imposter in her boyfriend's body. As he walked away from the destruction, Z's scare smiled Ben's smile, but the cold calculation behind those familiar green eyes would have chilled anyone who looked too closely. Julie sat at an outdoor cafe table, checking her watch with growing impatience. Z's scare spotted her from across the street, noting the frustrated set of her shoulders. He was late, deliberately so. The emotional manipulation was crude but effective. Keep her off balance, uncertain, and she would be less likely to question his behavioral changes. Julie, he called, jogging across the street. Sorry I'm late. She looked up, annoyance shifting to relief, then back to irritation. Let me guess. Alien emergency. How did you know? He asked, sliding into the seat across from her. It's all over the news, she replied, showing him her phone with footage of the downtown battle. Interdimensional portal, crystal monsters, the usual Tuesday for Ben Tennyson. At least it makes life interesting, he said with a practiced grin. Julie didn't smile back. It also makes you consistently late. We had plans, Ben. I know, and I'm sorry. But what was I supposed to do? Let those things destroy downtown? Of course not, she sighed. It's just, sometimes I wonder if there's room in your life for anything besides being a hero. Z's scare reached across the table and took her hand, mimicking the gesture of affection he'd observed in human couples. You're important to me, he said, the lie coming easily. Julie squeezed his hand, but her eyes remained troubled. You keep saying that, but lately you seem so distant. Like you're physically here, but your mind is somewhere else. Just a lot going on, he said vaguely. Plumber stuff, school stuff. You know how it is. No, I don't know, she replied, pulling her hand away. Because you don't tell me. We used to talk, Ben. Really talk. Now it's like pulling teeth to get more than 2 sentences out of you. This emotional maintenance was becoming tedious. Z's scare considered his options. Continuing the relationship required effort that might be better spent elsewhere, but abruptly ending it would raise suspicions among Ben's friends and family. I'm sorry, he said, modulating Ben's voice to sound appropriately contrite. You're right. I've been distracted lately. But I'm here now. Let's forget about aliens and portals and just have lunch, okay? Julie studied his face for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. But I mean it, Ben. Something feels different about you lately. Different how? He asked, careful to keep his tone casual. I don't know, harder, somehow. Less patient. Even the way you fight seems different. That explosion downtown, you used to try to minimize damage. Sometimes you have to break things to save people, he said, a hint of his true philosophy slipping through. That doesn't sound like you at all, Julie said quietly. The conversation was veering into dangerous territory again. Z's scare needed a distraction. Ship, he said suddenly, pointing behind her. Where's Ship today? The abrupt change of subject worked. Julie blinked, momentarily derailed. With my parents. Dad's been teaching him to fetch the newspaper. She smiled despite herself. It's kind of adorable, actually. He gets so excited when he does it right. You should bring him next time, Z's scare suggested, relieved to move away from scrutiny of his behavior. I've missed the little guy. The rest of lunch passed in lighter conversation, with Z's scare carefully steering topics away from anything that might expose his deception. He asked about her tennis practice, commented on the food, and even remembered to inquire about her father's recent business trip, a detail he'd gleaned from Ben's accessible memories. By the time they finished eating, Julie seemed more relaxed, the earlier tension mostly forgotten. But as they walked through the park afterward, she brought up an unexpected subject. Have you talked to Gwen lately? Like, really talked? Z's scare tensed slightly. We talk all the time. Why? She called me yesterday, asking if I'd noticed anything unusual about you. She seemed worried. This was concerning. Gwen was actively investigating him, reaching out to others in Ben's life. The timeline for his plans might need acceleration. Gwen worries too much, he said dismissively. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I've been making some breakthroughs with the Omnitrix, learning new ways to use it. That's what she's worried about, Julie persisted. She said you've been taking more risks, pushing yourself too hard. And that's a bad thing, he asked, an edge entering his voice. Becoming stronger, more effective. Julie stopped walking and turned to face him. It is if you're losing yourself in the process. Ben, what's really going on? And don't say nothing again. I deserve the truth. For a moment, Z's scare considered telling her exactly what was happening, watching her face transform from concern to horror as she realized the boy she cared for was gone, his body and mind hijacked by an ancient alien entity. The fear would be exquisite. But it wasn't time. Not yet. The truth is I'm evolving, he said carefully. The Omnitrix, my powers, my understanding of them, everything's changing. Sometimes that's uncomfortable for the people around me. Change usually is. That's not an answer, Julie said, frustration evident in her voice. That's more vague, fortune cookie philosophy. What do you want me to say? He demanded, his patience wearing thin. I want you to be honest. I want the Ben who didn't hide things from me, who trusted me enough to share what he was feeling. Z's scare took a deep breath, forcing Ben's body to calm its physiological stress response. This emotional confrontation was becoming a liability. You're right, he said, softening his tone. I haven't been honest. The truth is. I'm scared, Julie. Her expression immediately shifted to concern. Scared of what? Of what I'm becoming. These new powers, new abilities, they're changing me. Sometimes I feel like I'm losing control, like there's something inside me pushing to get out. The irony of this half-truth almost made him smile. Julie's face softened, and she stepped closer, putting her arms around him. Why didn't you just say so? We can figure this out together. Have you talked to Azimuth? Maybe he'd know what's happening with the Omnitrix. Not yet, he said, returning the embrace mechanically. I want to understand it myself first. But thank you for caring. It means a lot. The physical contact was uncomfortable, the emotional manipulation distasteful in its simplicity. But it was effective. Julie's suspicions were temporarily allayed, replaced by concern and a desire to help. Humans were so predictable, so easily manipulated through their emotions. It was both their greatest weakness and, occasionally, their greatest strength. As they parted ways later, Julie with a promise to be there for him, and Scare with a promise to be more open, he considered his next move. Gwen's investigation was troubling, but manageable. More concerning was the growing resistance from Ben's suppressed consciousness. It was time to solidify his control, both over Ben's mind and over the Omnitrix itself. And for that, he needed privacy and specialized equipment. It was time to visit Ben's secret lab. Few people knew about the abandoned plumber base Ben had converted into a personal workshop. Hidden beneath an old auto garage on the outskirts of Bellwood, it contained alien technology he'd collected over the years, things too dangerous or valuable to turn over to the plumbers, tools for experimenting with the Omnitrix, and backup weapons for emergencies. Scare accessed it using Ben's retinal scan and handprint, descending via elevator into the subterranean facility. Lights activated automatically as he entered, illuminating workbenches, computer systems, and display cases containing various alien artifacts. Perfect, he murmured, moving immediately to the central workstation where Omnitrix-related equipment was stored. Ben had been working on understanding the device for years, compiling data from his transformations and collecting diagnostic tools compatible with Galvan technology. Much of it was crude by Galvan standards, but functional enough for Scare's purposes. He activated the main computer, which displayed a holographic model of the Omnitrix, rotating slowly above the console. Data streamed alongside it, transformation metrics, energy readings, genetic sequencing information. Now, he said to himself, let's see what you're really capable of. He connected a diagnostic cable from the computer to the Omnitrix, initiating a deep scan of the device. As data flowed across the screen, he spotted something interesting: fluctuations in the core stability, minor but consistent, occurring at precise intervals. Curious, he muttered, enhancing the display to focus on those fluctuations. They appeared to correlate with moments of heightened resistance from Ben's consciousness. The boy was somehow connecting with the Omnitrix, using their bond to fight back against the possession. This could be problematic if allowed to continue. But it also suggested a solution: if Ben could use the connection to resist, Scare could use it to suppress him more completely. He modified the diagnostic routine, redirecting it to analyze the specific frequency of the bond between Ben and the Omnitrix. If he could identify the exact pattern, he could potentially disrupt it, weakening Ben's connection while strengthening his own. As he worked, he felt another surge of resistance, stronger than before. Ben's consciousness pushed against his control, a wave of desperate energy trying to break through. Impressive, Tennyson, Scare said aloud, his voice echoing in the empty lab. But futile. He concentrated, mentally forcing the resistance back down. But this time, it didn't subside completely. Instead, it pulsed, retreated, then surged again, like a tide testing defenses. So you've learned a few tricks, Scare acknowledged. Let's see how you handle this. He transformed into Ghostfreak, his natural ectoneurite form, and focused inward. In this state, his control over possession was stronger, his ability to suppress a host consciousness more complete. You cannot win, he told Ben's consciousness. This body is mine now. The Omnitrix is mine. Your life is mine. The resistance wavered but didn't fade. If anything, it seemed to draw strength from Ghostfreak's transformation, using the connection to the Omnitrix to push back harder. Scare hissed in frustration. The boy was more resourceful than he'd anticipated. Direct suppression wasn't working as effectively anymore. He needed a different approach. He reverted to human form and returned to the computer, searching through Ben's files until he found what he needed: research on the neural interface between the Omnitrix and its wearer. Ben had been investigating how the device connected to his mind, allowing him to control his transformations instinctively. "Perfect," Scare murmured, scanning the notes. According to Ben's research, the Omnitrix created a specific type of synaptic bond, integrating with the wearer's nervous system to facilitate transformation control and alien instinct management. That bond could be modified. Not easily, and not without risk, but it was possible. And if Scare could alter it, he could potentially cut Ben off from the Omnitrix entirely, eliminating his ability to resist through that connection. He began gathering the necessary equipment, neural interfacing tools, scanning devices, and most importantly, a small crystal of corpuscium, an extremely rare mineral that could affect synaptic pathways in unique ways. Ben had acquired it during an off-world mission, recognizing its potential value but not fully understanding its properties. Scare understood perfectly. On his homeworld of Fidos, similar crystals were used in ancient rituals of possession and consciousness suppression. As he prepared the procedure, his phone buzzed insistently. Checking it, he saw multiple missed calls from Gwen and a text message: "Emergency at Plumber HQ, Grandpa Max needs us now." He hesitated, weighing the importance of his current work against the need to maintain his cover. If he ignored a direct emergency call, it would raise even more suspicion. But he was so close to a breakthrough. Another text appeared: "Ben, seriously. Code red. People are dying." That settled it. The procedure would have to wait. Whatever was happening at Plumber HQ, it would look too suspicious if Ben failed to respond to a life-or-death situation. He carefully stored the corpuscium crystal and shut down the lab systems. The work would continue later. For now, he needed to play the hero once more. As he headed for the elevator, Scare felt the resistance within subside slightly. Ben's consciousness seemed to recognize the emergency, prioritizing others' safety over his own struggle. How predictably noble. And how useful, it made Scare's deception that much easier to maintain. For now. Plumber headquarters was in lockdown when he arrived. Security systems were at maximum, and armed guards stood at every entrance. They recognized Ben immediately and waved him through with urgency. "They're waiting for you in the central command room," one guard said. "Situation's critical." Scare nodded and hurried through the facility, noting the tension in every face he passed. Whatever had happened, it had the entire organization on high alert. He found Gwen, Kevin, and Max in the command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing various locations around Earth. All three looked up as he entered, relief evident on their faces. "Ben!" Max exclaimed. "Thank goodness. We've been trying to reach you for an hour." "Sorry, I was busy," Scare said vaguely. "What's the emergency?" "This," Kevin said grimly, gesturing to one of the displays. The image showed what appeared to be some kind of orbital platform, heavily damaged and surrounded by debris. Small craft swarmed around it, firing weapons that tore through the structure's remaining defenses. "That's the Plumber monitoring station in Earth orbit," Max explained. "It was attacked 90 minutes ago by unknown hostiles. The crew managed to get a distress call out before communications were cut." "Survivors?" Scare asked, studying the tactical display with professional interest. "Unknown," Gwen said, her voice tight with concern. "There were 23 plumbers aboard, including Magister Patellidae. We need to get up there," Max continued. "Rescue any survivors and repel the attack. The station contains sensitive information about Earth's defenses and the identities of undercover plumbers across the galaxy. If that data falls into the wrong hands..." "Why haven't you sent a team already?" Scare asked. "We did," Kevin said grimly. "They didn't make it past the attacker's perimeter. Whatever these things are, they're tough and they're smart. They've established a blockade around the station that our ships can't penetrate. Which is where you come in, Max said, looking directly at ZS Scare. We need someone who can bypass their defenses. Someone who can become intangible, or small enough to slip through, or fast enough to evade their weapons. You need the Omnitrix, ZS Scare concluded. We need Ben Tennyson, Max corrected. The Omnitrix is just a tool. It's your courage and ingenuity we're counting on. The sentiment was nauseating, but ZS Scare nodded solemnly. What's the plan? We'll take a plumber shuttle to orbital range, Gwen explained, pointing to another display showing a small, heavily armed craft. You'll transform into Big Chill or Ghostfreak to infiltrate the station while we provide a distraction. Find survivors, secure the data core, and then we extract. ZS Scare couldn't help but smile at the irony of their plan. They were asking him to transform into his own species, or something very similar, to save the day. The universe had a strange sense of humor. When do we leave? Now, Max said firmly. Every minute we wait puts those plumbers at greater risk. They moved quickly to the hangar bay where the shuttle awaited. As they boarded, Gwen pulled ZS Scare aside, her expression serious. Are you sure you're up for this? She asked quietly. With everything that's been happening with you lately. I'm fine, he assured her. This is what we do, right? Save people, stop the bad guys. She didn't look convinced. Just, be careful up there. And Ben? Whatever's going on with you, whatever you're going through, it doesn't change who you are. Remember that. Her concern was almost touching, in a pathetic human way. If only she knew who she was really talking to. I will, he promised, the lie coming automatically now. The shuttle launched minutes later, accelerating rapidly toward orbit. Through the viewport, Earth receded beneath them, a blue-green sphere wrapped in wispy clouds. ZS Scare stared at it with mixed emotions. So many resources, so much potential, all wasted on the insignificant species that called it home. Soon enough, he would change that. But first, this mission, an opportunity to further cement his position and perhaps gather valuable intelligence on plumber operations. The damaged station came into view, the extent of destruction even more apparent up close. Huge sections had been torn away, exposing interior compartments to vacuum. Debris floated in a cloud around the main structure, and among it, ZS Scare could see bodies, plumbers who had been caught in the initial attack or subsequent decompressions. The attacking craft became visible as they approached, sleek, insectoid vessels that moved with unnatural precision. They seemed to be methodically taking apart the station section by section. I don't recognize those ships, Kevin said, frowning at the tactical display. Not Incursion, not Tetramand, definitely not Galvan. They're Archaeonite, Max replied grimly. A species from the Void Zone. They're technological scavengers, harvesting advanced tech from other species. We haven't seen them in this sector before. Well, they picked the wrong station to scavenge, Kevin said, charging up the shuttle's weapons systems. Ready for the distraction run? Wait, ZS Scare said, studying the pattern of the alien ships. They're not just attacking randomly. Look at their formation. Everyone turned to the display. The Archaeonite vessels were indeed arranged in a specific pattern, concentrating their efforts on certain sections of the station while ignoring others. They're targeting data storage nodes, ZS Scare observed. See how they've avoided the reactor core and life support systems. They want information, not destruction. Max looked at him with surprise. That's very astute, Ben. You're right. They're after plumber intelligence. Which means there's a good chance they're keeping survivors alive for access codes and authentication, Gwen added, hope entering her voice. Change of plan, ZS Scare suggested. Instead of a frontal distraction, let's use their focus against them. Kevin, can you target the section opposite their main concentration? Not to destroy it, just enough to look like a rescue attempt. Kevin nodded, impressed. Draw their forces to the wrong side while you slip in the back door. Clever. I have my moments, Scare said with Ben's cocky grin. They adjusted course, approaching from the station's dark side. Kevin prepared the weapon systems while Gwen readied a communication relay that would allow them to stay in contact once Scare was aboard. Remember, primary objective is survivor rescue, Max instructed. Secondary is data security. If you can't extract the data core, destroy it. Scare nodded, activating the Omnitrix. I'll be back before you know it. He selected Ghostfreak's form, his natural state, though they didn't know that. The transformation washed over him, and for a moment he reveled in the return to his true body, even in this Omnitrix modified version. Comms check, Gwen said, adjusting the relay. Can you hear me, Ben? Loud and clear, Scare replied in Ghostfreak's raspy voice. Beginning insertion. He phased through the shuttle's hull into the vacuum of space. The cold emptiness was soothing to his ectoneurite physiology, almost like returning home. He floated toward the station, remaining invisible as Kevin initiated the distraction on the opposite side. Laser fire erupted from the shuttle, striking a section of the station far from the Archaeonite concentration. As expected, several of the alien vessels immediately broke off to investigate, leaving a thinner defense around their main target area. Scare slipped through the hull of the station, entering a darkened corridor lit only by emergency lighting. Atmosphere had been retained in this section, though gravity was minimal. He floated forward, his single eye scanning for threats or survivors. I'm in, he reported. Section 7 Alpha, emergency systems only. No sign of hostiles yet. Life signs. Max's voice came through the comm. Scare concentrated, using Ghostfreak's enhanced senses to detect subtle energy patterns. Yes, several, approximately 30 meters ahead. Faint but present. He moved toward the signatures, passing through sealed bulkheads and collapsed corridors with ease. The damage was extensive, but strategic. Systems had been disabled rather than destroyed, confirming his theory about the Archaeonites' intentions. Finally, he reached what appeared to be a makeshift barricade. Behind it, huddled in a pressurized compartment, were 5 plumbers of various species. They looked up in alarm as Ghostfreak's form materialized through the wall. Ben Tennyson, one of them gasped, a fish-like alien Scare recognized as Magister Patellidae. Never thought I'd be so happy to see that spooky form of yours. Rescue team is standing by, Scare informed them. What's your status? Bad, but could be worse, Patellidae replied. 2 critical injuries, the rest of us walking wounded. The Archaeonites hit us without warning, disabled our communications before we could get a full distress call out. What do they want? Scare asked, though he already had a good idea. The null void projector schematics, a human plumber answered grimly. We were analyzing a new version, more efficient and with better targeting. If they get it, they could use it to pull specific high-value targets out of the null void. This was interesting information. A more precise null void projector could be extremely valuable for Scare's plans. Perhaps this mission had more to offer than just maintaining his cover. Where's the data now? He asked. Secure server, central hub, Patellidae said. We locked it down when they attacked, but they've been working to crack it ever since. Won't be long now. Scare touched his comm. Gwen, I've found survivors. 5 plumbers, 2 critical. Need extraction at my position. On it, she replied. Kevin's bringing the shuttle around. Can you create an extraction point? Affirmative. He turned back to the survivors. Stay here. I'll clear a path to the outer hull for extraction, then secure the data. You can't go alone, Patellidae protested. The Archaeonites have some kind of energy weapon that can affect even phase-shifted matter. Saw them use it on Plumber Jenkins when he tried to escape. Pulled him right out of phase and into solid matter. That was concerning. A weapon capable of affecting ectonurites was rare and dangerous. All the more reason for you to stay here, Zskar insisted. I'll be careful. Without waiting for further argument, he phased through the wall and headed toward the outer hull, scanning for the safest extraction route. The station's layout was complex, made more confusing by the damage, but he found a path that avoided the heaviest archaeonite concentration. Kevin, bring the shuttle to coordinates 227 by 184, exterior section 9 beta, he instructed. I'll create an opening. Roger that, Kevin replied. 2 minutes out. Zskar reached the outer hull and began methodically weakening the structure at a specific point, creating a controlled breach that would allow the shuttle to dock temporarily without causing catastrophic decompression. As he worked, he sensed movement behind him. Turning, he saw 3 archaeonites approaching, insectoid creatures with exoskeletons that appeared to incorporate technological components. Each carried what looked like a rifle-like device emitting a faint purple glow. The phase shifter weapons Patelade mentioned, Zskar muttered to himself. He immediately went invisible, but the archaeonites didn't hesitate. They fired their weapons in a synchronized pattern, creating a web of purple energy that filled the corridor. Zskar tried to phase through the ceiling to escape, but the energy field affected him just as Patelade had warned. He felt his intangibility faltering, his ghostly form being forced back into solidity. Interesting technology, he said, becoming visible again and facing the attackers directly. But I'm not limited to just one form. He hit the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, transforming in a flash of green light. But instead of selecting a single alien, he attempted something new, a direct hybrid transformation, pulling aspects from multiple alien DNA samples simultaneously. The result was something Ben Tennyson had never achieved, a composite form with Ghostfreak's intangibility, XLR-8 speed, and Diamondhead's crystalline offensive capabilities. The Archaeonites stepped back, clearly startled by the transformation. You wanted advanced technology? Zskar asked, his voice a distorted blend of alien tones. Here's the most advanced in the galaxy. He launched forward with XLR-8 speed, becoming intangible to pass through their energy web, then solidifying his arms into Diamondhead's crystalline spikes to strike. The first Archaeonite fell immediately, its exoskeleton shattered by the impact. The second managed to fire its weapon, but Zskar phased through the beam and delivered a devastating uppercut that sent the creature flying into the ceiling. The third Archaeonite was more cautious, backing away while adjusting settings on its weapon. Zskar didn't give it the chance to fire. He extended crystalline shards from his hands, impaling the creature from a distance. Ben. Gwen's voice came urgently through the comm, what's happening? Your biometrics just went crazy. Encountered resistance, he replied, examining his hybrid form with satisfaction. Dealt with it. We're approaching your coordinates, Kevin reported. Ready for extraction. Zskar completed the hull breach, creating a makeshift airlock that would allow the shuttle to dock safely. As he worked, he maintained the hybrid transformation, finding it easier to control with each passing minute. The Omnitrix was adapting to his commands, accepting his authority over Ben's suppressed consciousness. The shuttle appeared outside, maneuvering carefully to align with the breach. Gwen used her mana to create a sealed tunnel between the shuttle and the station, allowing for safe transfer of the injured plumbers. Get them aboard, Zskar instructed as Kevin and Gwen entered. I'm going after the data core. We should stick together, Gwen protested, staring at his hybrid form with obvious concern. Ben, what have you done to yourself? Adapted, he replied simply. The mission requires it. Get the survivors to safety. I'll join you shortly. Before she could argue further, he phased through the floor, dropping down toward the central hub where the secure server was located. Behind him, he heard Kevin asking, did you see what he just did? That wasn't just Ghostfreak. Zskar moved quickly through the station, encountering more Archaeonites as he approached the central hub. They were clearly aware of his presence now, converging to protect their primary objective. Good. Let them come. Each encounter was an opportunity to test his new hybrid abilities, to push the limits of what the Omnitrix could do under his control. He fought his way through their defenses methodically, combining alien powers in ways Ben had never imagined. Ghostfreak's intangibility with Heat Blast's flames. XLR-8's speed with Diamond Head's weapons. Each combination more effective than the last, each victory more decisive. Finally, he reached the central hub. The room was heavily damaged, equipment scattered across the floor and panels hanging from the ceiling. In the center stood what appeared to be the main server, a cylindrical device glowing with blue energy. Surrounding it were 5 Archaeonites, led by a larger specimen with enhanced exoskeletal armor. They had connected various devices to the server, attempting to bypass its security protocols. "Step away from the server," Scare commanded, floating into the room. The Archaeonites turned as one, raising their weapons. The leader chittered something in their language, and they spread out in a tactical formation. "Last warning," Scare said, though he had no intention of showing mercy. These creatures and their phase-shifting technology were too dangerous to leave intact. They fired simultaneously, their weapons creating a complex lattice of energy that would be impossible to entirely avoid. Scare didn't try. Instead, he shifted his hybrid form again, incorporating aspects of feedback's energy absorption. The purple beam struck him, and instead of disrupting his phasing ability, they were channeled into his body, converted, and redirected. He raised his hands, now crackling with the Archaeonites' own energy, and unleashed it back at them. The result was devastating. 3 of the aliens were vaporized instantly, their bodies unable to withstand their own weaponry turned against them. The 4th was thrown against the wall with such force that its exoskeleton shattered. The leader, however, was more resilient. It activated some kind of personal shield that absorbed the reflected energy, then countered with a different weapon, a small device that emitted pulses of gravitational force. Scare felt himself being pulled toward the Archaeonite despite his intangibility. The gravity weapon was affecting fundamental physical laws, not just solid matter. Clever. But not clever enough. He shifted his hybrid form again, incorporating Gravitax's gravity manipulation. The pulling sensation ceased as he established his own gravitational field, canceling out the Archaeonite's weapon. Impressive technology, Scare acknowledged. But ultimately futile. He increased his gravitational output exponentially, creating a localized field so intense that the Archaeonite leader was crushed against the floor, its exoskeleton cracking under the pressure. It struggled, reaching for another device on its belt, but couldn't move against the overwhelming force. Scare floated closer, maintaining the gravitational pressure. "What is your real purpose here?" "The null void projector schematics are valuable, but hardly worth this level of commitment." The Archaeonite chittered and clicked, its alien language incomprehensible. But Scare had one more trick available. He incorporated a touch of gray matter's intelligence and Chameleon's universal translation capabilities. "Speak," he commanded. "I can understand you now." The alien's mandibles worked furiously. "The schematics are only part of our mission," it managed, its voice oddly mechanical through the translation. "We seek the Tennyson Protocol." Scare frowned. "What protocol?" "The contingency for extraterrestrial defense. The human Tennyson, he created it. A last resort, if Earth falls." This was unexpected information. Max Tennyson had created some kind of defense protocol that even the Archaeonites knew about. Something valuable enough to risk an attack on a plumber station. "Where is this protocol stored?" Scare demanded. The Archaeonite's compound eyes gleamed with what might have been defiance. "We do not know. Our intelligence suggested it was here. But we could not find it." Interesting. Very interesting. Another puzzle piece in the complex game he was playing. "Your mission has failed," Scare told the alien coldly. "And so have you." He increased the gravitational force one final time. The Archaeonite's exoskeleton gave way with a sickening crunch, the alien's internal organs rupturing under the impossible pressure. When ZS Scare finally released the field, nothing remained but a flattened mass of organic and technological components. Ben. Gwen's voice came urgently through the comm. What's your status? We've got the survivors aboard, but there's increased Archaeonite activity all over the station. I've secured the server room, he replied, approaching the central data core. Preparing to extract the data now. The station's becoming unstable, Kevin added. Whatever you're doing, do it fast. We've got maybe 10 minutes before this whole place comes apart. ZS Scare examined the server. It was plumber technology, but he had access to Ben's knowledge and experience with such systems. He located the main data module, a small, crystalline matrix that contained the station's entire database, including the null void projector schematics. And, perhaps, information about this mysterious Tennyson protocol. He carefully removed the module, securing it inside a protective compartment in his hybrid form. Then, making a split-second decision, he placed a small explosive charge on what remained of the server. Data secured, he reported. Returning to extraction point now. As he phased back through the station toward the shuttle, the explosive detonated behind him, destroying any remaining data the Archaeonites might recover. It also had the convenient effect of eliminating evidence of his true activities in the server room. He reached the extraction point just as the station shuddered violently, structural supports failing throughout. Gwen and Kevin had loaded all the survivors, and Magister Patellidae was already administering emergency medical treatment to the most severely injured. Let's go. Kevin shouted as ZS Scare entered the shuttle. This whole place is about to become a debris field. ZS Scare reverted to human form as Gwen sealed the breach with her mana. Kevin didn't wait for confirmation, immediately engaging the shuttle's engines and pulling away from the doomed station. They barely cleared the danger zone when the station's reactor containment failed. The resulting explosion illuminated space around them, the shockwave buffeting the shuttle despite Kevin's evasive maneuvers. Everyone okay? Max called from the pilot's seat where he'd taken over from Kevin. Affirmative responses came from around the cabin. ZS Scare sat quietly, the data module secured in his pocket. None of them had asked about it yet, too concerned with the survivors and their escape. Gwen settled into the seat beside him, her expression troubled. Ben, we need to talk about what just happened in there. We completed the mission, he replied simply. Rescued the survivors, secured the data, neutralized the threat. That's not what I mean and you know it, she said, her voice low to avoid being overheard by the others. That transformation, it wasn't anything I've seen before. You combined aliens somehow. I told you I've been discovering new abilities, he said with a shrug. The situation called for adaptation. It's not just that, she persisted. The way you fought. Patellidae told me you killed the Archaeonites. Not captured, not incapacitated. Killed. They were trying to kill us, ZS Scare pointed out. Sometimes lethal force is necessary. Not for you, she said, genuine fear in her eyes now. Not for Ben Tennyson. You've always found another way. Always. He was saved from having to respond by Max calling from the cockpit. Ben, can I see that data module? We need to verify it wasn't corrupted during extraction. Of course, Grandpa, he said, grateful for the interruption. He removed the module from his pocket and brought it forward. Max examined it carefully, then connected it to the shuttle's computer. Looks intact, he confirmed with relief. Good work, Ben. The null void projector schematics are safe. The Archaeonites said they were looking for something else too, ZS Scare mentioned casually. Something called the Tennyson protocol. Max's expression changed instantly, alarm replacing relief. They told you about that? Just the name, ZS Scare said, watching Max's reaction carefully. They seemed to think it was stored at the station. Max and Magister Patellidae exchanged significant looks. That information is classified, Ben, Max said finally. Level 10 plumber security clearance only. Which I don't have, Scare concluded. Even as the wielder of the Omnitrix. Especially as the wielder of the Omnitrix, Patelade interjected. No offense, son. This was becoming more intriguing by the minute. Whatever the Tennyson protocol was, it was important enough to be classified beyond even Ben's access, yet somehow connected to him or his family. None taken, Scare said smoothly. Just curious why the Archaeonites would risk so much for it. There are many organizations and species that would, Max said grimly. Which is why we keep it compartmentalized. The fewer people who know the details, the safer everyone is. The conversation was clearly over, but Scare had learned enough to pique his interest. Another piece of the puzzle, another potential advantage to exploit in his ongoing deception. The shuttle began its re-entry to Earth's atmosphere, the hull heating as they descended. Scare stared out the viewport at the approaching planet, his mind already formulating new plans. The Tennyson Protocol. The null-void projector schematics. The hybrid transformations. All tools, all weapons to be used when the time was right. And deep within, Ben's consciousness continued to resist, continued to fight back against the possession. But now Scare had a potential solution for that problem as well. The Crepuscium crystal waiting in the lab, combined with what he'd learned about the Omnitrix's neural interface. Soon, very soon, his control would be absolute. And Ben Tennyson would be nothing but a memory. The debriefing at Plumber HQ took hours. Each survivor was interviewed, medical treatments were administered, and the recovered data was secured in the base's most protected vault. Throughout it all, Scare maintained Ben's heroic persona, accepting gratitude from the rescued plumbers with appropriate modesty. But he could feel the weight of Gwen's stare, the suspicion that hadn't diminished despite the successful mission. If anything, his actions aboard the station had only heightened her concerns. When they were finally released, it was past midnight. Kevin offered to drive them both home, but Scare declined. I need to clear my head, he said. Think I'll walk. After everything that happened today? Kevin asked incredulously. Dude, you should rest. I'm fine, Scare insisted. Really? Just need some time to process. Gwen stepped closer, lowering her voice. Ben, please. Let us help you. Whatever's happening with the Omnitrix, with these new powers, we can figure it out together. Her concern was becoming problematic. The more she pushed, the more likely she was to discover the truth. Tomorrow, he promised. We'll talk about everything tomorrow. I just need tonight to sort through some things myself. She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Okay. First thing tomorrow. Your place. Deal, he agreed, already planning to be elsewhere. After they left, Scare headed not toward Ben's home but back to the secret lab. The Crepuscium procedure couldn't wait any longer. Gwen's suspicions were growing too quickly, and Ben's resistance was becoming more coordinated. The night was quiet as he walked, the stars overhead reminding him of his journey through space earlier that day. Humans took such beauty for granted, never truly appreciating the cosmic wonders that surrounded their insignificant world. He was nearly at the lab when he sensed a presence behind him. Turning quickly, he saw nothing in the empty street. But his ectoneurite senses, even filtered through Ben's human perception, detected something, a faint energy signature, familiar yet elusive. Who's there? He called, activating the Omnitrix but not transforming yet. Silence answered him, but the energy signature remained. It felt almost like an anodite, he realized aloud. Gwen. But no, the energy was different from Gwen's mana signature. Similar in its basic pattern but older, more refined, more powerful. Verdona, he said, understanding dawning. Ben Tennyson's anodite grandmother. A shimmer in the air, and then she appeared, a humanoid figure composed entirely of glowing purple energy, her hair flowing like flames around a face that held both beauty and immense power. "Not quite Ben Tennyson, are you?" she said, her voice echoing with otherworldly resonance. I felt the disturbance from across the galaxy. Someone wearing my grandson's form like a suit, but not belonging there. This was unexpected and potentially disastrous. Verdona Tennyson was an Anodite of incredible power and experience. If anyone could expose his deception instantly, it was her. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, backing away slowly. Verdona laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Oh please. I'm an Anodite, child. We perceive energy at its most fundamental level. And your energy is not Ben's. It's something colder. Darker. Something that doesn't belong in this realm at all." She floated closer, her mana aura expanding around her. "The question is, what are you? And what have you done with my grandson?" ZS Scare calculated his options rapidly. Fighting an Anodite of Verdona's caliber would be challenging even with the Omnitrix. Continuing the deception was clearly pointless. That left only one viable option: partial truth. "Your perception is impressive," he acknowledged. "Few beings can sense the difference." "Answer the question," she demanded, mana crackling around her hands threateningly. "Where is Ben?" "He's here," ZS Scare replied, tapping Ben's temple. "His body, his DNA, even his consciousness, all present. I've simply assumed control temporarily." "Possession," Verdona said, her eyes narrowing. "Ectoneurite possession, if I'm not mistaken. You're ZS Scare, aren't you? The ghost alien Ben's mentioned battling before." Impressive again. Her knowledge of extraterrestrial species was extensive. "The very same," he confirmed, seeing no point in further denial. "Though I prefer to think of this as liberation rather than possession. I'm freeing the Omnitrix from its limited user, allowing its full potential to be realized." "By stealing my grandson's body?" Verdona's energy flared dangerously. "I should tear you out of him atom by atom." "You could try," ZS Scare said coolly. "But my connection to Ben is deeply integrated now. Forcible removal would likely destroy his mind completely." "Is that what you want for your grandson? To save his body but leave him an empty shell?" Verdona hesitated, her power fluctuating as she considered this possibility. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Are you willing to take that chance?" He spread Ben's arms in a gesture of openness. "Besides, I haven't harmed him. Quite the opposite, I've made him stronger, more effective. I've unlocked abilities in the Omnitrix that he never could. I've defeated enemies that would have overwhelmed him." "At what cost?" Verdona demanded. "Ben's autonomy. His free will. Necessary sacrifices for greater power," ZS Scare replied. "But not permanent ones." "Not necessarily." This caught her attention. "Explain." "I have plans, Verdona. Plans that require the Omnitrix and, yes, Ben Tennyson's identity, for now. But once those plans are realized, once I've achieved my goals, perhaps we could come to an arrangement." "You expect me to allow you to continue possessing my grandson on the promise of maybe releasing him later?" She laughed incredulously. "You misunderstand me, Ectoneurite. I may not live on Earth, I may not involve myself in human affairs often, but family is everything to an Anodite. And if your interference results in permanent damage to Ben?" ZS Scare countered. "Can your family bond survive that guilt?" A tense silence fell between them. Verdona's energy continued to fluctuate, her power barely contained as she wrestled with the dilemma. "I could simply alert the others," she said finally. "Gwen, Max, Kevin. Tell them what you really are." "You could," ZS Scare acknowledged. "But would they believe you? Or would they think you're mistaken? After all, I've been Ben Tennyson for days now, and none of them have realized the truth. They've noticed changes, yes, but attributed them to the Omnitrix, to stress, to maturation. Your claims would seem fantastic by comparison. Gwen would believe me, Verdona said confidently. She has the spark, the anodite sensitivity. She's felt something wrong already, hasn't she? That was true, and concerning. If Verdona and Gwen combined their anodite abilities, they might indeed find a way to expose him without risking Ben's mind. Time for a different approach. Perhaps we can find middle ground, Z.S. Scare suggested. A compromise that serves both our interests. I'm listening, Verdona said cautiously. Give me 1 week, he proposed. 7 days to complete my immediate objectives. In return, I swear by the shadows of Anar Fidos that I will not permanently harm Ben Tennyson or any member of his family, including you and Gwen. An ectoneurite oath, Verdona murmured, clearly recognizing the significance. Such oaths were binding in ways that transcended physical reality, tied to the very essence of the species. Furthermore, Z.S. Scare continued, pressing his advantage, I will allow you limited contact with Ben's consciousness, so you can verify his condition yourself. This was a calculated risk. Ben's resistance had grown stronger, and giving him direct contact with an ally as powerful as Verdona could be dangerous. But it might be the only way to prevent immediate exposure. Verdona considered the offer, her energy swirling around her as she thought. 3 days, she countered. And I want contact with Ben now, before I agree to anything. 5 days, Z.S. Scare negotiated. And you can have your contact, but briefly, and under my supervision. Even with your power, forced extraction would be catastrophic for Ben's mind, as I've explained. Another long moment of consideration, then Verdona nodded. Agreed. 5 days from this moment. And I want to speak with Ben now. Z.S. Scare inclined Ben's head in acknowledgement. This would be delicate, requiring precise control of the possession while allowing Ben's consciousness enough freedom to communicate. Place your hands on his temples, he instructed. Your anodite energy will create a channel that allows you to reach his suppressed consciousness. Verdona approached cautiously, her mana-composed hands coming to rest gently on either side of Ben's head. Z.S. Scare felt her energy probing, seeking the spark of Ben's true self beneath the layers of his possession. Ben, she called, her voice resonating on a level beyond physical sound. Ben, can you hear me? Z.S. Scare carefully relaxed his suppression, allowing Ben's consciousness to rise just enough to respond but not enough to fight for control. It was like opening a tiny valve on an immense pressure tank, dangerous but manageable if done precisely. A flicker of awareness, then a surge of recognition. Ben's consciousness, recognizing the familiar energy signature of his grandmother. Grandma Verdona? The thought was weak but clear, transmitted through the anodite's energy connection. Yes, kiddo, it's me, she replied, relief evident in her voice. Are you okay? What happened? Ghostfreak, during transformation, took control. The thoughts were fragmented, struggling against Z.S. Scare's continued suppression. Been fighting, getting stronger, need help. I'm here now, Verdona assured him. I know what's happening. I'm going to help you, but I need time to find the right way. Can you hold on a little longer? Yes, using the Omnitrix connection, to resist, tell Gwen, suspicious already. Z.S. Scare decided that was enough. He reasserted his control, pushing Ben's consciousness back down into suppression. That's sufficient confirmation, I think, he said in his own voice through Ben's lips. Verdona removed her hands, her expression a mixture of relief and concern. He's stronger than you anticipated, isn't he? Fighting back more than you expected. Irrelevant, Z.S. Scare replied coldly. His resistance will end soon enough. But now you've verified his condition, alive, aware, undamaged. Do we have an agreement? 5 days, during which you do not interfere or reveal my presence to others. Verdona's energy flared once more, her frustration evident. But eventually she nodded. 5 days. But if you break your oath, if you harm him or anyone else permanently, there will be nowhere in this universe you can hide from me. Understood? Perfectly, Scare replied with Ben's smirk. I'll see you in 5 days, Verdona Tennyson. I suggest you use the time to research safe methods of ectoneurite extraction. You'll find there aren't many. With a final flash of energy, Verdona disappeared, though Scare could still sense her presence nearby. She would be watching, monitoring from a distance. A complication, but a manageable one. The encounter had changed things, however. His timeline was now accelerated. 5 days to complete as much of his plan as possible before Verdona returned with potential means of exposing or extracting him. The Crepuscium procedure couldn't wait another hour. He needed to permanently sever Ben's connection to the Omnitrix, ensuring that even if Verdona found a way to help, Ben would have no method of fighting back. He continued toward the lab, his pace quickening. Time was now his enemy as much as Ben's family. But in a way, the constraint was liberating. No more need for subtle manipulation or careful deception. Now he could move directly toward his goals with the freedom of a deadline. 5 days to accomplish what he'd planned for weeks or months. It would be tight, but doable. And when Verdona returned, she'd find that her grandson existed only as a memory, a ghost in his own body. The irony was almost poetic. The lab hummed with energy as Scare prepared the Crepuscium procedure. He had connected the Omnitrix to multiple diagnostic devices, their screens displaying the complex energy patterns and neural interfaces that linked the device to Ben's consciousness. The Crepuscium crystal glowed with an eerie blue light as he mounted it in a specialized containment field. Its properties were unique, able to affect the boundary between physical matter and consciousness, particularly useful for species like ectoneurites who existed in that liminal space. The preparations are complete, he murmured to himself, making final adjustments to the equipment. Soon, Ben Tennyson will be nothing but a passenger in his own body, unable to resist, unable even to perceive what happens around him. He felt another surge of resistance from within, stronger than before. Ben had clearly been energized by the contact with Verdona, his consciousness pushing harder against Scare's control. Still fighting? Scare asked with amusement. Good. It will make your final defeat that much more satisfying. He activated the primary sequence, causing the Crepuscium crystal to pulsate more rapidly. Energy began to flow from it into the neural interface connected to the Omnitrix and, by extension, to Ben's brain. The effect was immediate. Ben's consciousness recoiled from the alien energy, retreating deeper to escape its influence. But the Crepuscium energy followed, inexorable, penetrating the barriers between Scare's possession and Ben's core self. You feel it, don't you? Scare said, speaking aloud though no one else was present. The severing of your connection to the Omnitrix. The device you've worn for years, that's become part of your identity, being cut away from your consciousness. The resistance grew desperate, frantic, as Ben realized what was happening. The Omnitrix on Scare's wrist began to flash, its symbol changing from green to yellow to red as its systems detected the interference. A warning appeared on one of the monitors, unauthorized neural modification detected. Failsafe protocols initiating. Scare frowned. He hadn't anticipated this level of autonomous protection from the device. Azimuth had built in more safeguards than expected. He adjusted the Crepuscium field, increasing its intensity to override the Omnitrix's failsafes. The crystal's blue glow deepened to purple, then almost black, as it drew more power from the lab's systems. Danger, wearer neural pattern degrading, the monitor flashed. Emergency shutdown imminent. No. Scare snarled, frantically rerouting power to maintain the procedure. You will not stop me, Azimuth. Not now, not when I'm so close. The lab lights flickered as energy drained from all systems to feed the Crepuscium field. The crystal was now a singularity of darkness, pulling in light rather than emitting it, its fundamental properties shifting under the extreme conditions. Inside Ben's mind, the battle raged. ZS Scare could feel Ben fighting with everything he had, using his familiarity with the Omnitrix to try to activate its failsafes, to break through the possession even for an instant, long enough to transform, to call for help, to do anything that might disrupt the procedure. But the Crepuscium energy was relentless, worming its way into the very fabric of Ben's consciousness, rewriting the neural patterns that connected him to the Omnitrix. Minute by minute, that connection weakened, frayed, began to break. "It's working," ZS Scare said with grim satisfaction as the monitor warnings began to fade. "The failsafes are being bypassed. The Omnitrix is accepting the new neural pattern, mine." A final surge of resistance, desperate and primal, as Ben's consciousness made one last attempt to break free. For a moment, just a moment, ZS Scare felt his control waver, Ben's will asserting itself through sheer determination. Ben's hand moved of its own accord, reaching for the Omnitrix dial, fingers brushing the activation mechanism. "No!" ZS Scare shouted, channeling all his possessive energy into reasserting control. He slammed Ben's hand down on the lab table, pinning it there with supernatural force as the Crepuscium procedure reached its climax. A pulse of energy exploded outward from the crystal, washing over the room in a wave of absolute cold. The monitors shattered, equipment smoked and sparked, and for an instant, everything went completely dark. When emergency power came on seconds later, ZS Scare remained standing at the center of the destruction, Ben's body unmoving, eyes closed. The Omnitrix on his wrist was silent, its usual gentle hum absent, the symbol dark. Slowly, Ben's eyes opened, but the gaze that looked out at the damaged lab belonged entirely to ZS Scare now. Cold, calculating, ancient. "Ben Tennyson," he called inward, probing for any sign of the consciousness that had fought him so persistently. Nothing. No resistance, no awareness, not even the faintest flicker of the human's presence. Just emptiness where Ben's self had been. The Omnitrix suddenly flared to life, its symbol glowing bright green once more. But when ZS Scare accessed it mentally, the interface felt different, responding directly to his thoughts, without the filter of Ben's consciousness between them. "Complete neural reconfiguration," he said with quiet triumph. "The Omnitrix recognizes me as its sole user now. And Ben." He paused, probing deeper, searching for any trace of the boy's consciousness. There, something remained, but it was no longer a coherent self. Just fragments, memories without awareness, knowledge without identity. Less than a ghost, barely even an echo. "The procedure exceeded my expectations," ZS Scare concluded, examining the darkened Crepuscium crystal. It had burnt itself out completely, its unique properties exhausted in the process. A rare and valuable resource, used up in a single application, but worth every atom for the results achieved. He checked the time, 3:27 a.m. Hours until dawn, and hours more until anyone would expect to see Ben Tennyson. Time enough to clear away the evidence of the procedure and finalize the next phase of his plan. With Ben's consciousness effectively eliminated and the Omnitrix fully under his control, ZS Scare could now move forward without the constant struggle against internal resistance. And with Verdona's 5-day deadline, he had a clear timeframe in which to work. First priority, dealing with Gwen Tennyson. Her anodite abilities and growing suspicions made her the most immediate threat, especially now that Verdona had made contact. If grandmother and granddaughter combined their efforts, they might find a way to reverse what he'd done. That couldn't be allowed. Gwen would need to be neutralized, not killed, as that would bring too much attention too quickly, but removed from play. Isolated, contained, unable to interfere. And he knew exactly how to do it. The data module from the plumber station contained more than just null-void projector schematics. It also held personnel files, including genetic markers for all active plumbers and their families. Genetic markers that could be used to create a targeted dimensional displacement field, sending Gwen Tennyson to a pocket dimension where she would be safely out of the way until his plans were complete. ZS Scare smiled Ben's smile as he began clearing up the destroyed lab equipment. Everything was falling into place, proceeding even faster than he'd anticipated. Ben Tennyson was gone, the Omnitrix was his, and soon the greatest threats to his plans would be eliminated. 5 days was more than enough time to reshape the world to his liking. And when Verdona returned, expecting to help her grandson reclaim his body, she would find that there was no grandson left to save. Morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through Gwen Tennyson's bedroom window. She'd slept poorly, her dreams filled with disturbing images of Ben surrounded by shadows, reaching out for help she couldn't provide. The anodite sensitivity that Grandma Verdona had often spoken of was growing stronger in her, making her more attuned to energies and connections around her. And something about Ben's energy had felt wrong for days now, distorted, contaminated, as if something else was mixed with his natural pattern. She reached for her phone, checking the time, 7:15 a.m. Early, but not too early to call Kevin. They had agreed to meet at Ben's house this morning to finally get to the bottom of whatever was happening with him and the Omnitrix. Kevin answered on the third ring, his voice groggy with sleep. "Kinda early, don't you think?" "Sorry," she said. "But I couldn't sleep. I'm really worried about Ben." "Join the club," Kevin replied, sounding more alert now. After what he did on that space station, that wasn't normal, even for Tennyson. The hybrid transformation, the way he fought the Archaeonites, that weird feeling I get whenever I'm near him now. Gwen listed her concerns. "Something's seriously wrong, Kevin." "So what's the plan?" "Intervention at his house." "That's the idea. We confront him together, don't let him dodge the questions anymore. If it's the Omnitrix malfunctioning, we call Azimuth. If it's something else." "Like what?" Kevin asked when she didn't continue. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe some kind of alien influence. Mind control. Possession." Kevin was quiet for a moment. "You really think it could be something that's serious?" "I hope not," Gwen said. "But we need to be prepared for anything. Can you pick me up in 30 minutes? "I'll be there," he promised before hanging up. Gwen dressed quickly, selecting clothes that would allow easy movement if things went badly. As she gathered her things, she noticed a faint purple glow coming from her spellbook on the desk. Curious, she opened it to find a message written in glowing manuscript, a message in a hand she recognized immediately. "Gwen, Ben is not Ben. Ectoneurite possession by ZS Scare. Dangerous to confront directly. Meet me at the abandoned quarry outside town at noon. Tell no one." Verdona. Gwen stared at the message, her worst fears confirmed. Possession. That explained everything, the personality changes, the different fighting style, the cold energy she'd sensed. Ben wasn't changing, he wasn't even Ben anymore. But how had Grandma Verdona discovered this? And why warn against direct confrontation? The message faded from the page as she watched, the mana energy dissipating into the air. Verdona was being cautious, leaving no evidence that might be discovered. Gwen's mind raced as she considered her options. The planned intervention with Kevin couldn't proceed as intended, not if Ben was actually ZS Scare in disguise. But canceling altogether might alert the possessor that something was wrong. She needed to play along, to pretend she didn't know the truth until she could meet with Verdona and develop a proper plan. But that meant facing an ancient, powerful ectoneurite who had somehow managed to completely take over Ben's body and the Omnitrix. The thought chilled her to the core. How long had her cousin been trapped inside his own mind, watching helplessly as something else controlled his body, his powers, his life? Days? Weeks? Her phone buzzed, a text from Kevin. "Outside in 10. Ready to get some answers." She texted back, ready, while mentally preparing herself for the performance ahead. She would need to be convincing, to show just enough concern to maintain their original plan while not revealing that she knew the terrible truth. As she headed downstairs, a new determination filled her. ZS Scare might have taken Ben's body, but he had made a critical mistake, he had left Ben's family intact, unaware but not incapacitated. And the Tennyson family, especially with Anodite power on their side, was more formidable than any Ectonurite could imagine. "We're coming for you, Ben," she whispered to herself. "Just hold on a little longer." Z's scare sensed them coming before they arrived. After the Crepuscian procedure, his connection to Ben's body had deepened, enhancing his perception of the physical world. He could feel the vibrations of Kevin's car approaching, could almost taste Gwen's mana energy on the air. They were coming to confront him, as expected. The timing was inconvenient but unavoidable. He had spent the early morning hours preparing, setting up the necessary components for his plan to neutralize Gwen. Now he would need to maintain his "something went wrong with this response, please try again." Alright, keep the story moving. Write what comes next. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.